Okay, and everyone, I just started recording this session so that we could have an archive of this historic and second in the Publisher Data event. So welcome everyone to this event, and thank you for being with us today and joining us from so many different places across North America, actually. So welcome to our US and our Canadian partners who are here today. And so I think I know all of you, but just quickly, my name is Lori Peak, and I am going to start sharing my screen because Ellen Rathje from the University of Texas, Austin and Design Safe, we're going to offer a few contextual and opening remarks today. So it's really great to see you all. Let me get that up there. Okay, are you seeing my slides?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So again, welcome and thank you so much for being here today. We're really excited to have such a diverse range of researchers and research projects that are represented here. And we just wanted to say that when we say we're really excited that you are here with us, we really, really mean it, and really want to acknowledge that it was way back in January, February, when Design Safe and Converge and Rapid first put this call out for the Publisher Data event. We were supposed to have gathered in April of 2020, which feels like 20 years ago, when we were supposed to have been together in Boulder, Colorado. And of course, that was not to be because of the pandemic that is continuing to upend so many lives. And so we just really wanted to tell you all thank you for your patience, your tenacity, your contributions, and for still showing up in this virtual environment, because we are still so excited to move this work forward. And with each fresh disaster, we're reminded of exactly how important this is. So thank you for being a part of this. And we wanted to tell a little bit of a story about this partnership, and bringing you together has really been a 2-year journey, but it's even been a much, much longer journey than that. So I want to actually acknowledge at the outset that today we have Steve French on the call, who is a wonderful, wonderful urban planner, a distinguished professor, and he also was one of the leaders of a big workshop that was actually funded by NSF CMMI several years ago. And in 2017, they released this really important report that was focused on building a CMMI data infrastructure. And many of the things that Steve and the colleagues that he brought together, what they were writing about in that report, thankfully with the support of NSF, Design Safe, as the NSF funded cyber infrastructure for our natural hazards community, has really been able to move forward in a profound way. And so I know that so many of you on this call have been thinking about data publication for so long, and it is such an honor to have the Design Safe team here that's moving us into this next realm. And so to tell you a little bit about our journey together, it actually started with a phone call, and the Design Safe team heard me tell this story last time, but I'm going to tell it again, that it was back in June of 2018, with a little bit of gentle prompting from the NSF, encouraging me when I was writing my Converge grant proposal to reach out to the one and only Ellen Rathje, who I had met through some natural hazards engineering research infrastructure meetings, and I definitely had known enough about her to know that she is a force of nature herself. And so I sort of tentatively picked up the phone on June 2018, and I asked Ellen, because Ellen and her team had already made so much inroads in the engineering community through Design Safe, but part of our goal was to establish this partnership so that the social and behavioral science, urban planning, public health and medicine, and other allied disciplines who are concerned with the human causes and consequences of disaster could partner. And so Ellen, without even missing a beat, said yes, and that was the beginning of this journey. And so in August of 2018, we formally established this partnership to try to move forward on the idea of a social science and interdisciplinary data model. By October of 2018, the Design Safe crew had arrived and landed in Boulder, Colorado, and Maria, Tim, and Craig, who you can see in the upper right, immediately put us to work. Then you can see in the left side, Jennifer Tobin, Dave Hondula, who are with us today, drawing diligently their data models at our October 2018 meeting. Then in July of 2018, Craig and Tim and other Design Safe colleagues joined us at the Natural Hazards Workshop and interviewed over 80 social and behavioral scientists, urban planners, engineers, and others to test out this data model. And then in the spring of 2020, Design Safe released this new data model that we are going to be talking about today. So virtual round of applause and thanks. And so what are we going to be doing today? So number one, first and foremost, now that this new capability has been released specifically for the field, we're going to learn about new Design Safe capabilities that are for us, the social and behavioral scientists, planners, and others. We're going to understand and discuss why publishing and sharing data and instruments is so important. And because you all are the early adopters, we know that you already know why, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how to ethically publish our data. And if we're not ready to publish our data, how to publish instruments and other materials via Design Safe. Then we're going to take next steps to actually move forward for some of us for receiving our first ever permanent DOI for our data, instruments, or other materials. And then we're going to talk about next steps to become a Converge data ambassador. So those are the objectives. But now I'm going to ask if Maria, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. What is this actually all about? And what are we trying to accomplish? And so in a minute, Maria is going to show us via this video. So Maria, will you share your screen now? Maria Esteva, I should say, so Maria Watson doesn't feel on the screen.
Do you see the?
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Dear Vasant, I hope the new job is going well. I have good news. The reviews for our paper are back, and we just have to update figures 6, 8, and 10 with the latest data. Can you do that within the next week or two?
Peter Lee has those data sets. I don't know what those data are.
Can we ask Peter then? Do you have his contact info?
He's in China.
I know, but do you have contact info?
No.
Do you know where the data might be? Or where he left his lab notebook with all the metadata? Metadata. The labels for all the columns of data. The units for all the data. That kind of thing.
Oh, well, maybe the wind tunnel computer? Maybe the portable hard drives? Maybe that white box in the grad student office closet? Maybe the Google Drive project folder.
Well, I hope Sarah says she's feeling attacked right now. I hope you realize that's not the reason we put that video together.
Sarah, we're going to have all your data in one place by the end of this 3 hours. So in that little video, that obviously shows the importance and the power of what we can do when we work together to curate our data, to bring our data together, and to ultimately share our data. And we also, oh, sorry, now I'm playing it. So we also wanted to acknowledge that in another very important report that was funded by and led by the NSF for the Social Behavioral and Economic Division, said for the past 3 decades, leaders of the scientific community have called for sharing access to scientific data. The main rationales for data sharing include to reproduce or verify research, to make the results of publicly funded research available to the public, to enable others to ask new questions of extant data, to advance the state of research and innovation. And increasingly, funding agencies around the world are requiring investigators to share data created with public support. And so we also know that several of our major journals that many of us publish in are also increasingly requiring data publication. And so we really are in the midst of this so-called data revolution. And so it's really, really exciting to be here with you today as we move this forward. And this obviously would not have been possible without many, many important people who we wanted to acknowledge at the outset. And so in particular, we wanted to acknowledge Jessica Austin, Nicole Arrett, Dave Hondula, Valerie Marlowe, and Nathaniel Rosenheim, who have been they have been data champions from the beginning, and they have led the organizing committee for these two events and played a really big role in helping to shape what it is that we are going to be doing today. So thank you to the organizing committee. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ellen to offer a welcome and to recognize the extraordinary team that she always brings to the table. So Ellen.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Lori. And it is really an exciting time. Like when you say we have this data revolution, and it's exciting to see that journals want our data. But our data sets are getting bigger and more complex, and it's not just a spreadsheet that they can put on their website. And that's really the role of data repositories, to provide a more structured and formal presentation of the data that can be independent of the paper and really there for the long term. You know, as we started on Design Safe 5 years ago, and we're focused on natural hazards engineering, it became quickly clear that we needed to go beyond the engineering and really understanding societal impacts. And that's why it's really exciting to have you all here, really filling that important gap. Because, you know, as we say, if earthquake or hurricane happens and there are no people there, we really don't, it's not really that significant. And it's the fact, where are the people, where are the infrastructure? That's what makes these natural hazards really into natural disasters. And that's what we're trying to avoid. I am so proud of the team that we have at Design Safe and the hard work that they do. You're going to meet many of them today. Maria Esteva is our data curator and data archivist, and she's really the architect of putting all these pieces together. And she's got another team behind her really implement her vision. You see there Craig Jansen, Mahyar Sharifi, Keith Shrimka, who are part of the TAC software development team. And so I think, I didn't pay attention to exactly who's here. I saw Mahyar and Craig. I think they're here. Keith is probably coding up and fixing some bugs back at home. And then, of course, I don't think Tim is here either, but Tim is my deputy director, who also is director of user services at TAC. And Scott Brandenburg, who is a co-PI for Design Safe, who is at UCLA and worked really hard on testing the field research data model. And so a great team, and we're excited to have you here. This summer was supposed to be my first time going to the Natural Hazards Workshop and getting to meet all y'all. That was very Texan of me, sorry. And Tim always, he's been there the last couple of years and always has said, you've got to go. It's a great group. It's a great conference. And I was sorry that one year I tried to come. We have a global pandemic, but it's definitely on my bucket list to get out there when we can see each other in person again. So I'll turn it back to you, Lori.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ellen. And again, huge welcome and thanks to the Design Safe team and to all the future data ambassadors who are on here. Know that the other two people you see on this screen that we haven't talked about, Joe Wortman and Troy Tanner, who are both at the University of Washington and with a RAPID facility. They've also been working on a variety of capabilities with the RAPID app to ensure mobile data collection and direct connections to Design Safe in terms of securely storing data and also increasing the potential for us to be able to share, publish and share our data. And so at future meetings, we needed to keep this one no more than 3 hours, but we will be back to you in future meetings with opportunities to also learn from the RAPID facility. So I also wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge all of the members of the Converge team who are housed here at the University of Colorado Boulder Natural Hazard Center team. Every single person on this team has done just a great job of contributing to this data model and to many of the other activities that are happening through Converge. And so I want to thank everybody on this team. Several of the Converge team members are here, so we'll be introducing themselves shortly. And so what we're going to do now is that we're actually, for the future data ambassadors who are on the call, what we're going to do, and I'm actually going to time this so we stay on time because we have a lot to learn from Design Safe. But what we're going to do is each one of the people whose names are up on the screen submitted a data template to let the Design Safe team know what the data or what the instrument is that you are planning on sharing as, or perhaps publishing, maybe even just contemplating publishing as part of this. And so what we're going to do is each one of you are going to have 2 minutes to both share with the group that's on the call today about what it is that you're thinking of publishing or how you're thinking of using Design Safe. And then also in your 2 minutes, if you have questions for the Design Safe experts who are on the call today, this is the time to start throwing those out so that as Design Safe is sharing information with us later, then we can hear from them. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see each other again. And we're going to start with Lauren Clay. Let me see if Lauren is on here. Sorry, I can't even see you all. There you are. Hi, Lauren. Okay, Lauren, are the rules of the next 45-minute session clear and you're ready to go?
Just cut me off at 2 minutes if I'm still talking.
Okay, it's all you. Thank you.
I'm Lauren Clay. I am an associate professor at D'Youville College as of Monday. And I study I study public health aspects of disasters broadly, but a lot of my work looks at health outcomes after disasters and disruption to the food environment and food security. I plan to use Design Safe in a few ways. I'm already using it now for end-to-end data management, which I think is so cool because I have people all over at lots of different institutions and can't keep track of like Teams and Google Drive and Box and Dropbox, and there's so many things. I could just put Design Safe in my search bar and it comes up. It's so nice. So I'm using it for that purpose, and people have been able to access and use it really well. So I'm interested in learning more about those capabilities. I'm also planning to use it for data curation and publishing. So I have two grants right now that I put it in my data management plan. And so I would like to live up to my commitment to do that. And one of those is a rapid for COVID, and it's survey data. And it is complicated. It is cross-sectional, longitudinal, 6 waves across 3 states. So trying to figure out how to make that reasonably out there and available. And then I have a data repository, a data collection instrument repository that I manage. It's focused on the social determinants of health and COVID. And people would like to cite it. So I would like to curate it and publish it so that we can have a DOI and people can cite it in their grant proposals and things. So that's the most urgent thing and what I plan to work on today. My major questions are related to human subjects data and even exempt anonymous data that might be sensitive. I do a lot of survey research. I study human beings, and the things that they tell me is what I would like to put out there responsibly.
Just thank you for ending with that very big thing, Lauren Clay. Thank you. Over to Candace Evans.
Hi, I'm Candace Evans. I'm a graduate research assistant at Converge and the Natural Hazard Center, and also a doctoral student in the Department of Sociology at the University of Colorado Boulder. And I did submit a data template, but I'm here more to just listen and learn, as my colleague, Rachel Adams, was at the previous Publish Your Data event, and we're together working to get DOIs for the Converge check sheet series that we've been working on for the past however long. So the data template that I submitted was to publish one of the check sheets that I co-authored with 2 of my other colleagues. And it's a systematic literature review table to help aid researchers in inventorying literature for a systematic literature review. So really, don't really have any specific questions at this time, but I'm really excited to learn how I can continue to support Converge and beginning to acquire DOIs for these check sheets.
Nice, thank you, Candace. And I just put the link to the check sheets in the chat box that Candace is talking about. And if you all look at that, you can see there are lots of different check sheets with lots of different authors. And so Maria has been working with Rachel and Candace to ensure that each one of those check sheets can get a DOI to help with data discoverability, or to help with discoverability on the web, which is something else that Maria is going to talk to us about today. So thank you, Candace. And now over to Steve French.
Steve, you are
Steve, mute. Or unmute.
How about that? A little better?
Perfect, perfect.
So I'm committed to data publishing and the ability to use and reuse data to do new and different things. So I am looking at publishing a data set actually I developed quite a while back as part of the Mid-America Earthquake Center. And I was with the Mid-America Earthquake Center for about 8 years. I led the social science thrust area there. And one thing we discovered in doing earthquake risk analysis was the difficulty of getting good building inventory data. It seems trivial, but it's not so easy. So we started with tax assessor data. We built a neural net model that took things like the age, the use, the size of the structure, the number of stories, and made inferences about what type of structure it was to put into our damage models. So we added to tax assessor data. We used some remote sensing data as well. So I think this has, it's actually several different GIS data sets. I think there are something on the order of 292,000 buildings, 300,000 parcels. I think the documentation is pretty good, but that'll be a test to see how well people can understand the fields and the data. But it's set up as a series of shape files, and it's a little bit long in the tooth. It's 2007, but interesting enough, building stocks changed incrementally. So if someone wanted to go back to Memphis and redo that data set, this would be a good place to start, and then just put the incremental changes on top of it. Also useful for kind of other sorts of urban non-hazard uses, looking at what kinds of uses are where and how things change over time.
Nice, thank you, Steve. And I think you're going to need 2 office hours with Maria with that data set. Thank you. Next up, we're going to do Alex Greer, please, which I know actually Tristan's on here too, but Alex, over to you.
Sure. So I'm Alex Greer. I'm an associate professor at the State University of New York at Albany, also associate as of Monday, so exciting. I'm really excited about this platform too. I think collaboration we made much simpler through this. I've seen a lot of what Lauren's doing. I'm putting in my own proposals now, so I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about introducing it to students. I think there's a lot of good avenues there for senior theses, master's theses, even some dissertation work, so I think that's really exciting. I'm bringing data from an earthquake project that I worked on with co-PI Tristan Wu, where we were looking at, we had a really cool student sample where we actually got pre-post data on an earthquake. And we have a household survey, and we also have some qualitative data. My questions really come from the qualitative data. When we originally put it in and transcribed it, I had my student clean it. I went through and re-cleaned it. And in re-cleaning it, I had to take out a lot of the interviews just because it was too identifiable. You know, I started to think, how many geologists are in Oklahoma? Okay, well, if you narrow that down, you know, can you pull this person out of a hat? So that was a big challenge for me in actually putting the data set out there. So I'm just to see how we talk through that.
Thank you, Alex, very much. Eric Kennedy.
Hey, can you hear me by chance?
Yeah, yes, you sound good.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I just had to move over to phone. We were talking earlier about disasters. And while this isn't a hurricane, we had a thunderstorm come through and I lost power 2 minutes ago. So I'm now on cell phone, and so I apologize for not having video. So our project here, most directly that we're looking at for the data upload is some COVID-related research where we've been doing nationally representative surveys and trying to track Canadian social impacts, attitudes, and other dimensions of the human experience of COVID-19. And we're keen to be able to share some of the instruments and data with that. The questions that we have are a little bit tricky because of the international context. So one of the things that I'm curious to get a sense of from this meeting is how to navigate different aspects of our IRB process, where our IRB and other institutional IRBs we've been working with have been really hesitant to have our data hosted on American servers and have been urging us to use Canadian repositories or UK or Australian repositories and the like where we can. And so I, in some ways, have to sort of come up with a sales pitch to be allowed to upload this data. Even though it's going to be open access, there are just these concerns around server location and which databases are prioritized. And so I am very keen to have this conversation and figure out how I can approach this with the IRBs and other governing bodies here.
Nice, thank you, Eric, and we're glad you're safe, and thank you for calling back in and for raising that really important question. Sarah McBride, over to you. How are you thinking of using Design Safe?
Hi everyone. Am I muted?
You're good.
I'm muted. Okay, great. Hi, I'm Sarah McBride. I'm a research social scientist and occasional Mendenhall Fellow at the USGS, the US Geological Survey. I'm mostly a communication and media researcher. That's where I come from. And I work at the Earthquake Science Center at the US Geological Survey. So Steve, I'm very interested in your work. I work mostly on the communication research of aftershock forecasts and other earthquake products that the USGS has developed. But I'm also the coordinator of the social science working group for Shake Alert, which is the earthquake early warning system for the West Coast United States. And we're currently in live testing mode in the state of California, which is pretty exciting and also really stressful. And Lori and her fine team at the Natural Hazard Center is a part of the social science working group. So really we're looking at 4 types of data streams that we would like to share with other researchers so that we can get this important research around Shake Alert in particular into the literature and into researchers' hands. One is we're developing an after action survey for those who've experienced earthquakes within the Shake Alert system around their experiences around earthquake early warning. So that's one. The other one is looking at CCTV footage that's captured on, or social media footage that's captured on earthquakes on the West Coast states and in Utah and Idaho and other places that have had earthquakes recently for a human behavior analysis. And we've already used a VERT team to help us gather that data. And we want to make that a more common practice so that we can gather all that data and then share it for whoever wants to publish that data. So the other one is we're looking at a media repository for content analysis for earthquakes, and so collecting all the media stories and then assisting anyone who wants to do media analysis on earthquakes in the United States. And the fourth is we're developing a series of questions for the Did You Feel It data set. There's going to be between 5 and 10 questions that are specific to Shake Alert, and we've already had 6 active Shake Alerts that have occurred. Shake Alert messages, so earthquakes that were large enough that could distribute Shake Alert in the state of California since we started last October. And we know we can't publish on all of the data that we're going to collect. So we would like to be able to get people access to that data to publish. My main question is around something a little bit different. Instead of the IRB, we have to deal with Paperwork Reduction Act as a federal agency, and how we can get research that we collect as a federal agency that's human data into the hands of other researchers beyond having different research agreements and hiring researchers to do this. How can we make this more freely available for everybody? And that's kind of one of our biggest stumbling blocks as a federal agency in social science is the Paperwork Reduction Act, which can take up to 18 months to get approval for. So sorry, that was a bit of a spiel. But anyway, that's my main question. Thank you so much for having this event. I really appreciate it, Lori.
Nice. Thank you, Sarah, very much. So I am next up on the list. So I'm starting my timer, and I actually want to share thanks to Design Safe. We actually, so are you seeing the Natural Hazard Center, a big splash screen right now? Okay, so this actually is a map that's up on the Natural Hazard Center webpage. And you can see there that we actually, per Ellen's recommendation, that we added a link to the data that we published that undergirds this map. And so this is a map that the Natural Hazard Center team, oops, sorry, I just went in, that the Natural Hazard Center team built a database of all of the different academic hazards and disaster research centers that we could find globally. And then what we did was, it's just a super, super simple, just a few column data set. But then we figured if we got to walk the walk if we're going to talk the talk. And so Maria worked with us so that we could have a publication on Design Safe. And so we have a permanent DOI. And so I just wanted to show you what it looks like, but what I wanted to say of why this was so exciting for those of you who haven't yet published data was that it's not just about getting another thing on our CVs, that one of the things we all talked about was that while we're using the data for a certain purpose to generate this map, that we know that other people may come in and now use this data for a purpose that we could never imagine. And they may go out and do some kind of analysis. And so that was just really, really exciting for us. And so I just wanted to share that. And then I wanted to share that the next data that we're going to share up on Design Safe is going to be the de-identified SSER data, because we're doing an annual census of social scientists who study hazards and disasters. So that's going to be the next thing that we're going to put up on Design Safe, so it's available to our community. Thank you for listening. And now my 2 minutes are up, and I'm turning over to Nathaniel Rosenheim, who's also a major early adopter and tester of Design Safe. And so Nathaniel, it's all you.
Thank you, Lori. Steve, I've actually used your data set twice, and I think I spent at least 2 months worth of emailing with people at NCSA to figure out what all the columns meant. So I'd be happy, I mean, we figured it out now, but I'd be really happy when it's on Design Safe, and I think it's a great data set. And Lauren, I don't think we've met, but I'll be really happy to get in touch with you afterwards, because I also do food security research after disasters, and that's what I have up on Design Safe now is a survey instrument from Hurricane Harvey. And I've got a lot of other data that I'm, I feel like one thing I'm trying to do is not feel bad about my past failings in data sharing, but look forward to the future. And I'm really glad that Design Safe is here now. And I'm really looking forward to using it as part of my research going forward, though I am trying to clean up years of missed opportunities. I actually used Design Safe this summer with students, and we've got I don't think they've been published, but we have a couple of projects that students worked on that are in the Design Safe queue. At the Hazard Reduction Recovery Center at Texas A&M, we've got a backlog of survey instruments that we've started several Design Safe projects to publish the survey instruments. And I'm going to save the rest of talking about another project for Maria Watson, who's working with the Center of Excellence funded by NIST. I've got 18 seconds. Anyway, I think this is great. I'm excited about Design Safe, and I'm really glad that this is a part of our community, and I'm really happy that there's enthusiasm about it.
Thank you, Nathaniel. And let's hop over to Maria Watson.
Thanks, Lori, and thanks, Nathaniel. Yeah, so I guess I'm on here because Nathaniel has helped me get on Design Safe, and we've been doing all the work with the students. So yeah, trying to use Design Safe to help publish student work, because we know that traditional papers take much longer, and so for our master's students or our professional students, they want things a little bit quicker. So that's been so great about Design Safe, and yeah, working on getting some of the waves, the kind of additional waves from there's a interdisciplinary longitudinal study in Lumberton based out of the Center of Excellence at Colorado State. So I've been working on carrying the baton with Wave 2 and getting that data on. So yeah, looking forward to learning about everyone else's projects and learning a lot these next hours.
Thank you, Maria. And now we're going to go over to Gavin Smith.
Okay, great. It's good to be here. And so I wish I could report out on some results. I know, Lori, I was going to do that. So we're doing a national survey of states and territories looking at the role that they play in building the capacity needed to implement hazard mitigation grants. And that's a real interest of mine, is that, you know, I would argue that the role that states play in disaster management is understudied. And so I'm particularly interested in that space. My area of research is hazard mitigation, disaster recovery, and climate change adaptation. And I have a real interest in translating research to practice, which is one of the things I'd be interested in exploring more with all of you. Is that, for example, this survey that we developed over time, we developed it through multiple iterations with FEMA national staff. And I'd be really interested in exploring how we use this mechanism, this group, to get practitioners and policymakers engaged in the development of these data sets, and then getting them, if there's a way to do it, is to get them connected so that they may say, hey, I want to restudy this. For example, we're studying this role of states following and prior to the rollout of the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program. Well, similar research was done just after the funding of the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000. So my point is that, you know, I can see federal agencies and others having a real interest in maybe revisiting these data sets. So that's just a bit to perhaps think about. Our survey, the response in the middle of a pandemic, I think was pretty good. We had about we have a 70% response rate, which I thought was pretty good. We were initially going to conduct the survey face-to-face with all states and all territories at the Emergency Management Institute, which was really going to be amazing. They were all going to be sitting at terminals, and we were going to be able to answer questions they may have. And so we would have, in theory, had a 100% response rate, but then that meeting was canceled because of the pandemic. The survey now has gone online. We do have the data. We're in the midst of finishing it up. So I'll just perhaps stop there.
Nice, thank you.
Or that 2 in 1 seconds.
I was also telling you peace and thank you. Oh. and Gavin, your template looks great, and thank you for that. And thank you for the questions. And luckily, we do have 2 federal partners on the call today who may be in the discussion. We'll be able to talk more about that great idea too. So thank you. And now we're going to move over to Jonathan Surrey and his canine companion.
Hey, everybody. Nice to be here today with you guys virtually. My name is Jonathan Surrey. I'm a project director at the National Center for Disaster Preparedness at Columbia University. I see some familiar faces and names across the panel, so nice to see you guys. I am also an incoming doctoral student at the Mailman School of Public Health, starting this fall, so that's exciting. Not quite as exciting as associate professor, but little by little. So yeah, I'm curious to learn more about the model and its applications in general. We do have a recently completed data set of looking at Hurricane Harvey recovery with a small Canadian sample that we were able to get through the network of a nonprofit that works in hard-hit areas after Harvey. So we're currently looking to run through the analysis of that data set. That is probably the best example of how I'd like to get involved with the ScienceSafe platform. We also have some secondary data analysis that we've done. We've compiled a U.S. hazard index that I often get probably an email a week asking for the underlying data of, and I can't, that's not living in a place that's shareable right now, and I'd love to figure out how to make that more accessible for people. I think one of the questions I do have is how this platform over overlaps with other repositories. So we do have 2 data sets that are sitting within the Gridseed platform from the that are, each have their DOI. Is that something that could be re-entered into DesignSafe, or is that not possible? And the same thing with our academic repository at our Iceland University Academic Commons. Same kind of a question of how those play together, and if they do. So thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thanks for joining us. And we're going to meet Deborah Salon in a moment, who had a very similar question about connections between DesignSafe and the Harvard Dataverse. And so thank you, DesignSafe, for keeping track of all of these great questions. Next, and Dave Hondula, I see you on here. I'm going to go to you next after Tristan and Sky, because I made a grave error and did not put you on the list. So I apologize, Dave Hondula, but you'll be next after Tristan and Sky, please.
So am I on mute?
You're good.
Okay, cool. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so I'm here actually represent Sky and Mike Lindell as well, and Sky will talk a little bit later after me about the Taiwanese data that we recently collect. But Mike, Sky, and I have been collecting earthquake quick response data, which is the immediate response during and after the earthquakes. So we collect data in Christchurch, New Zealand, and also Hitachi, Japan, right after the Japanese earthquake. So those data were collected back in 2012, and those are ready to share, and we de-identified the identifiable information, so those are actually ready. And then I will and one question about those data though, Laurie, is that those data were collected when we all were back in Texas A&M. So the IRB approval was back there, was from Texas A&M, but none of us are now affiliated with Texas A&M anymore. So how are we going to work on that thing? I don't really know. So that's a question for you. And then I will let Sky to talk about our recent Taiwanese earthquake data that we just collected.
All right, everyone, I'm Sky from Alabama. So talking about our Taiwanese earthquake data, this data is collected in 2019. Basically, they follow the same survey instrument as we did for the Japan and the New Zealand data. The most different things between the New Zealand data and the Taiwanese data is that we creation the more variable. We mentioned more variable about the contextual, the circumstances regarding the respondents' perception on darkness, because the Taiwanese earthquake is a nighttime strong earthquake. Other than that, generally the data set among those 3 events are generally consistent, including the personal, the emotion response, protective action, aftermath response, and the other demographic characteristic. That's all.
Thank you, Tristan and Sky, very much. And thanks for bringing both major projects here and the question. Dave Hondula, over to Arizona.
Hi, everyone. Great to connect with all of you. First, in the spirit of equity, there's been an underrepresented class on the meeting. This is my data interested cat, Buttercup. Thank you for participating. Hi again from Arizona, where it's nice and hot, and related to that, my interests are related to heat exposure and human health. We've dabbled a little bit in power failure research, like many of you, interested in thinking about survey data and uploading survey data and all of its friends to DesignSafe, including protocol, data dictionary, and so on. So really looking forward to having that conversation. I have a special charge from one of the students we work with to think hard about interview data and how interview data can interface with DesignSafe. And I'll be taking extra close notes. I think we have a student who is ready to hit submit to Design Safe like yesterday, and I said, well, just hold on for a moment. I think I'm going to get some good information tomorrow, so I'll be listening closely. But thanks to everyone for facilitating this conversation.
Yeah, that submit button can be a little intimidating because it says like, "Are you sure you cannot change anything?" Don't worry though, if you make a mistake, we can help you out on the back end.
Come to the hours on Tuesday if you can work a little bit more, if you can wait a little bit more, and it will give you peace of mind, and we can publish at that time. And if it's your first publication, then you'll do the next without any issue.
Nice, thank you. And Dave, again, thank you for being one of the earliest contributors to this data model and for traveling to Boulder to do that work. And so we're going to turn this over to the Design Safe team in just a moment. But first, we have several participant observers who are on the call today who just wanted to be here to listen and to learn and to understand more about the Design Safe capabilities. So now I'm just going to go through the list of our beloved participant observers in just about 30 seconds. If each one of you would just say your name, affiliation, and a sentence or two about what you are hoping to get out of today. So Latasha, we are going to begin with you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm Latasha Allen. I am on detail with the Administration of Children and Families. I'm in the Office of Human Services Emergency Preparedness and Response. And I'm here just to learn more about the Design Safe, Converge, and just all of the data that's out there pertaining to social sciences. My background is disaster epidemiology, and I actually focused a long time on foodborne illness outbreaks. So getting back to that social science data platform and combining that with emergency response is what I'm looking to do. So I'm excited to hear about everyone's projects, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Latasha. Jessica. Oh, Jessica, you're muted.
Of course I am. Okay, sorry about that. My name is Jessica Austin. I'm a graduate research assistant at the Natural Hazards Center and a doctoral student in sociology at CU Boulder. I'm mostly here just to watch and learn. I'm the data manager for the SSEER project, so we work very closely with Lori on that. And looking forward to learning more. And Dave, Penny says hello to Buttercup. She was watching intently for most everybody's introductions, but she sensed the camera was coming on and took off, so.
Thank you, Jessica. Nania.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nania Campbell. I am a research associate at the Natural Hazards Center. And like Jessica, I'm just really interested in learning and seeing the data that other people are publishing and hearing your ideas and seeing what's out there. I too am just attending with the cat companion. Pesca is over here at the window, napping through this event, getting bad grade.
Thank you, Nania and Pesca. And Megan, back up to Canada. Oh, Megan. Oh, shoot. It looks like you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Do you hear me now?
Perfect.
Put on my headphones because there's construction right behind me and they always start drilling as soon as I come on a Zoom call or something. So sorry if there's any background noise, but yeah, I'm in Canada. I'm at Queen's. I'm a Master of Science candidate in health promotion. So I'm going into my second year, starting to do my research on wildfire framing and messaging in local news, and hoping to also do a project on like the combined effects of wildfires and COVID-19 on intentions to engage in health promotive behaviors. So eventually hoping to use Design Safe to some extent to yeah, write something about my findings or about the instruments that I use down the line. But yeah, just excited to learn more and be with some like-minded people.
Welcome, Megan. And Jeffrey Gunderson. Oh, Jeffrey, I think you are muted.
Everybody.
Hi.
just looking forward to learning more about Design Safe. I actually am very, very interested in data sharing and the future that holds, and getting science to catch up with the technology that we have.
Welcome. Thank you, Jeffrey. And if any of you on the line have ever looked at the Natural Hazard Center website or the Converge website, we all owe Jeffrey a standing ovation for both of those things. So thank you, Jeffrey. Over to Deborah Salon. Is Deborah still on here? We might have lost Deborah. So Deborah was going to join us. She's also at Arizona State University, Dave, and she was, again, probably going to publish her data on the Harvard Dataverse, but was very interested in Design Safe and is also leading one of our COVID-19 working groups. Jennifer Tobin, over to you.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to see all of your faces today. I really enjoyed reading through all the data templates that you put online already. And so I think it's great that we have such a diverse array of data and so many questions that we can learn from each other on. So this kind of crowdsourcing of ideas and questions on how to upload your data is great. I was involved in the early stages of development of the social science model at CU Boulder, and I look forward to seeing how it's progressed over time. And also I run the Quick Response Grant Program, among other things, at the Natural Hazard Center. And we are really encouraging a lot of the people who are getting these awards to publish their data and use Design Safe and really just, make it something that becomes part of our normal language of what we do in the stages of what we do post field work. So I really look forward to learning more and seeing how I can best assist other people in publishing their data and yeah, being part of this wonderful team. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jen. And Courtney, over to you.
Hello. Speaking of animals, so I have a herd of dogs running past me. My name is Courtney Walton Mitchell. I'm with the Colorado School of Public Health and the Natural Hazard Center. I'm currently working with colleagues on, we have one domestic data set and 2 international data sets that we're thinking about publishing. So I'm just here to learn more and see if it might be a good fit. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Courtney. Okay, I think we got everybody with the introductions. That was an amazing group. And so Ellen and Maria, we're now going to turn this over to you to answer every remaining question and to tell us everything we need to know. Thank you.
That's a tall order there, Lori, but we'll do our best. So I'm going to first do kind of a broader overview of Design Safe with, just to give you the idea of our vision, as well as the things that we offer that extend beyond simply the data publishing. And then I'm going to turn it over to Maria to get into a little bit more detail related to some aspects that are very specific to the social science data that you guys are dealing with. And then I think Craig and Maihar will come on and give you a really detailed tour of the field research data model. So let me share my screen and get this started and get my laser pointer. I always feel like I need to point. Okay, sounds good. All right, so I'm going to talk about Design Safe. We've heard that name quite a bit, a cyber infrastructure for natural hazards research. We used to say natural hazards engineering research, but we dropped it because we know it's so much more than just the engineering side. So I'm always playing around with this definition of what is Design Safe. And in fact, I changed it just this morning because we're revamping our website and we've tried to really condense it as much as possible. So this is how I'm trying to kind of put it all in a nutshell, is that we're a web-based research platform that has the goal of enabling transformative research to protect human life and reduce damage during natural hazard events. That's a tall and big endeavor that we're trying to claim. But how do we do that? And what are we going to provide that will allow researchers to perform that transformative research? So we want to provide a CI that is integral to your research discovery. So that starts with providing a platform for data sharing and publishing, and that's mostly what we're here to talk about today. But again, we are striving to be more than that. We want to enable the research workflows that you are needing to do. If you need access to high performance computing, we can provide that. And we want to provide cloud-based tools that support the things you want to do with and to the data. Analyze it, visualize it, integrate it, map it, all of those things, so that you don't have to download the data and figure out what tools go with it. We want it to kind of be a one-stop shop for the data and the tools that work on it. And if we fulfill these 3 goals and provide these capabilities, we'll amplify and link the capabilities of natural hazards researchers around the US and around the globe. So if you've been to the DesignSafe website, it looks a bit like this. As I said, we're starting to work on a little bit of a redesign, but these are the main components and they'll still be there. The most important in terms of doing your research is the research workbench. And you can see here, the main components are the data depot, our data repository, the workspace, the recon portal, the SimCenter research tools, and the user guide. So I'm really going to focus here on these top 3, the data depot, workspace, and reconnaissance portal. So the data depot repository has different levels of access. So when you log into the data depot, you'll see that you have a private space just called My Data, and that's just for you, only you have access to it. So in that way, it could just be a cloud storage area. We have a collaboration space called My Projects, and that's where you create a project, you add team members, and anything you put in that project is shared with the team members, and ultimately it's from the projects where you select what needs to be published. Okay, so you can only publish from this project space. And once that curated data is published, it goes into the publicly accessible published area and made available to the broader public. We do have another area called community data. Sometimes we think of it as the wild, wild west because the data there is uncurated, but still potentially useful to be, and that's why it's given, you want to give public access to it. So those are the main parts of the data depot. The discovery workspace, which we often just call the workspace, that's where our tools reside. Computational simulation tools, data analysis tools, visualization tools. And the key here is they all have access to files in the data depot. Published files in the data depot, the data that you have in your projects, the data that you have in My Data, all those files are available. And then finally, because of the emphasis on understanding impacts from real events and doing that type of post-event reconnaissance, we have another area called the reconnaissance portal where we try and make it easier to discover published any type of field data or any type of data associated with specific natural hazard events. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about each of these. And I would typically start with the data depot, but since that's our main focus for the rest of the day, I'm going to focus on the other 2 parts first. So the workspace, and this is where, again, I want to emphasize we're not just a data repository. So this is where the cloud-based tools reside, some of which are HPC enabled, some of them are commercial code, so anyone from an academic institution can access MATLAB in the cloud. We're pushing people more towards Jupyter and Python. Our Jupyter Hub supports both Python and R scripts. The beauty here is open source, not needing to worry about light commercial licenses. And if you've done anything in Jupyter or Python, you know that it could be so much. Data analysis, data viewing, you can link it with some AI and machine learning packages. We're working on ways that you could actually run your jobs on a supercomputer all through Jupyter. So we're really doubling down, I keep saying, on how we can use Jupyter to do our work. And here's just an example from that Mike Yar put together is where he took data that was collected on the engineering impacts from Hurricane Harvey, and then built a machine learning model to predict damage. So again, so much you can do, and now you can publish the data plus the scripts and the models that use that data. So much you can do. I could spend a half an hour talking about this, but I won't. So here's the reconnaissance portal, where we can link to archive data sets from these type of events. So each map pin represents an event for which data is available. So you can see lots of stuff in the last 4 or so years since we've been around, lots of hurricanes, but you can see we've got events from all over the globe. And if you drill down and click on one of these map pins, for instance, here's the Kaikoura earthquake that I, myself and Joe Wortman did some reconnaissance. We looked at a lot of the landslides from that event. We published a landslide inventory that one of my students developed from satellite imagery. And so you can see that if you click on that landslide inventory, it takes you to the project. This is an older version of our project, our publication interface. So the projects look a little different today, but this one will look like this. And then you can see here are the files. And then one of those files can be opened in our HazMapper app. And here you can see the results from that and inventory. We've got, you know, the landslides identified, some pictures, and these are our GPS tracks from a helicopter route tour of the landslides that we took. So we can, again, put that all together so that others can use it. We'll note, Lori, I noticed that great map that you created. We have a goal this next year to come up with a way that we'd be able to serve those type of map interfaces within DesignSafe, as well as having the underlying data published in the Data Depot. So stay tuned if you're a mapping person. Oh, I also remember Steve French mentioned something about GIS and shapefiles. We have a cloud-based QGIS. So again, those files could be viewed in the cloud, would not necessarily need to be downloaded. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Data Depot. As I mentioned, these are all the different parts that the Data Depot we talked about, my data, my project, the published area. We notice we can also link to your cloud service providers. You may have all 3 of these. You may have collaborators who use different ones of these. They can move directly from Box or Dropbox into DesignSafe and vice versa. It's not auto-synced, but it is available for you to move things around. So again, it's My Projects is where you put your data that you will eventually publish. And you don't have to publish everything in a project. You can just take the files that you want published and push those to the published space, yet still having access to all the files within this protected project. I mentioned the cloud service providers, and there's where things end up once it's published. So here's an example, of course, I'll start with an engineering example of a published project. This was from a soil test in a geotechnical centrifuge. And what you can see here is it looks like a journal article, but you start drilling down, you know, the way it's organized is really well laid out. I have to thank Craig for really putting together the UI here. And you can see the hierarchies, then you ultimately get to the files. And so this is the data model. The data model is the fact that we know that you have to describe your model and your sensor and then your events when you get down to the data. But we realize that that's not exactly the same for everyone. So our data models, I like to say that we provide structured yet flexible data models that support different types of research. And again, Maria has really been the architect of this. We want you to be able to show your data and explain your data in a way that makes sense to you and the way that makes sense to your community, rather than forcing you to put it in some sort of hierarchy that maybe doesn't make sense. So we realized we at least needed the outline of maybe about 5 different types of projects. You know, a shaking table test is very different than what we do in the field. So it doesn't make sense to have the same data model there. So we have experimental projects, simulation projects, hybrid simulation projects, which is something that engineers do where they couple these two in the lab. And then we've got field research, which is what we'll focus on today. And then we realize sometimes someone wants to publish data that doesn't fit into any of these. So we kind of put in this all-encompassing other, which has very minimal requirements in terms of the data model. So we can focus on those 2 today, and really the field research. But always keep in mind, if it starts to get cumbersome to use field research, there's no problem to move to this more generic other type of project. With flexibility comes responsibility. I'm so often asked, well, how do we know if the data makes sense or the data is, you know, the quality of the data? that is the responsibility of the researcher. We want to give you the flexibility to organize things the way you want, but that means you have to think about how you want to represent your data. So I like to give Nathaniel the 2 thumbs up, even though he's down the road in Texas A&M. He published our first, I think, field research data set with social sciences data. He mentioned this already. Food access impact survey from Hurricane Harvey. So congratulations on that. We're excited. That's in June. And here again, you can see the title, the abstract, and then you get down to to have the instrument. Importantly, I think for any data set, no matter what repository you use, is to have a DOI to the data set. And so here is the DOI, and I thought we had it there, but we provide you the exact citation language. So that's very clear that when you cite your data, you want to put the citation in your reference list, just like you would a paper citation. A couple other things to keep in mind, because I know some folks were asking about this, is tracking downloads and usage by others. And that's another thing that is in our work plan for the next year, is to expose the download metrics and citation metrics for a data set, so that you can come to this website and see how much your data has been downloaded and then ultimately cited in the long term. So I think this is my last slide, and this is where really Lori and Maria and Craig and Mahyar and Tim all worked really hard together to develop a data model that could support integrated interdisciplinary data sets. We didn't want to have the social science data over there, engineering data over there. We wanted them integrated in the same project. And so this is still a mock-up, and that Lori worked hard to make it as realistic as possible. So, Hurricane Michael, structural damage and population resilience. You can see we've got the coupling there of the engineering and the social science. We've got information on the type of event and the specific event that was investigated. This is where we can go back to the question about waves, right? No, it wasn't the hurricane waves. I knew that. Because of the ambiguity in the engineering world of what you might mean by a wave, we settled on a more generic term that we call a mission. And so I like to think of it as a group of data collections that are associated with any type of common goal, location, time. If that means wave to you, that's what we mean too. So here, for instance, the mission was to look at Mexico Beach through a RAPID grant. And then within there, you see we've got, within that mission, we've got collections of data related to the engineering or geosciences, and then we've got data collections related to the social sciences. So here, up here is the damage data, down here is the social science observations of children in shelters and parents in shelters. So the collections of those data grouped together based on a shared purpose or project and goal. And that's where Craig and Mahyar will explain how to curate your data to make it look like this once it's published. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. The chat was going crazy. I don't know if they were all saying, "We can't hear you, Ellen." Hopefully not.
Ellen, they were all asking, there were requests already for your slides. And so
oh, great.
Yeah, for that, and wanting to share it with the groups that they are a part of. So thank you for that overview. And Ellen, I don't know if you want to, if people have direct questions for you, you want to take a few questions now or transition over to Maria, or how do you want to do it?
Why don't I'll take a few questions. Let's not get too off. I know we're already a little behind schedule. So yeah, Steve. You're muted still, Steve.
Steve,
don't you hate this? I know.
Like to mute me.
There we go.
I think. This is a question I kind of had, it kind of came to my mind when Lori was talking about the list. She's got the map, she's got of the different hazard centers. That's dynamic and will change over time. So some will go out of business, new ones will come into being. And so I was thinking that might be what a mission is. When you've got a dynamic changing data set like that, do you have one DOI that's kind of a snapshot in time, or do you have one DOI with the underlying data evolving over time?
That's a great question. And this is another thing that we're working on this next coming year is versioning. So because you don't necessarily want a different DOI, you just want to say, we've updated it and this is version 2. And that could even be because you found an error, right? Let's say you had a data set that had an error and you want to republish it. Right now, if you find an error, you email us and we help you fix it on the back end. But we want to more formalize the fact that, oh, now we have a version 2 that fixed this thing. And we're working on that in the next year. Lauren.
I also had a question about versioning because I'm trying to publish a repository that people will continue to add to as they develop new instruments. And I want to cross-reference, like this survey was developed using these other 3, but adding. But my question is, so I work as part of a large network of people who are doing similar surveys in lots of states during COVID. And so one question for that project is, within the project and the management of the files, is there a way to standardize the format of data upload to the project? So if there's, say, 20 PIs, which there are, each with wanting to share a survey that the same project, then to be published together, is there a way to standardize the format that they upload?
I think that would need to be on the way you want to implement it. For instance, if you say, I'm assuming a survey is like a Word document that gives the questions. I may be so wrong.
Yeah.
What is it?
It could be a Word document.
Yeah.
PDF.
So, yeah, it could be a PDF, right. So, I think that in that case, it would be great for you to create a template and say, we want you to use this template, put in your questions, whatnot. The best, the way to organize it may be that each person has their own folder, because remember, the way it's published is not exactly what the folder hierarchy is. So those, the hierarchy you see when it's published, you define that separately than the folder hierarchy. So there's lots of different ways we could do that. Lauren, and then Maria, I know she wants to get answered too.
So we have many teams like your team of engineers that are, involved many groups, and even Nathaniel has the same kind of structure, many PIs. And these teams, they do develop their own little policies on how people should approach their data sets and when they're ready to publish and what metadata they want, in all of them. So each group has their own freedom, and we can consult, but they have their own policies and curation workflow guidelines that they take. Then also our data model, the beauty of it, and I think this will answer other questions, is that you can publish these individual, surveys per group of PIs with their own DOIs and within a same project as different missions. You will see that when Craig explains. So you will have the possibility to have, let's say, all the whatever surveys together related or relate other projects. So there's always the opportunity in Design Safe to keep, and this is what we like, is so important that, okay, this is everything about this project, which is surveys for what, blah, 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 whatever.
So
you
Lauren, define. So Lauren, was there any last,
that's just really helpful. Thank you, Maria, because it's not just the survey, but it's going to be the data set and the data dictionary and the code for cleaning the data and
Yes. And actually Nathaniel put a great thing in the chat there. He said, basically you can have a README PDF, which kind of explains, this is what these folders have, this is what these files have. So there's lots of ways, but we can work with you on that.
Awesome.
Anything else?
I just also wanted to mention that if the survey instruments are kind of like completed through like RAP app, or something like that, then like among all of the groups and the PIs involved in the project, like in some particular cases, then everything's gonna be similar in terms of like formats and so on, even the data and so on.
That's a good point. Great. All right, I think I can hand it over to Maria.
Okay, so I will be speaking about something that everybody seems to be interested, and it's that everybody has, and especially this team has a lot of protected private data. And so first of all, I encourage you to ask questions through the chat. If my colleagues cannot answer them, I'll answer them after I give my presentation. But if you post them for everyone, then that's better. And to continue and to think through, if I am not answering some of the questions or the comments that you posted in your introduction, we will have plenty of time at the end of or almost at the end of the presentation or at least at the end of this workshop to answer them. So I want to talk about the life cycle of protected data in Design Safe. And what is protected data? Basically data that should not be disclosed to unauthorized parties. That's basically it. But of course, there are many, formal ways of identifying data. There are different types of protected data. Data with personal identifiable information, data under FERPA, HIPAA, or other federal and state government restrictions like national security, and of course, data with very sensitive confidential information, which many of you are gathering at this point when you interview people that have been affected by natural disasters. And we always have to think that protected data has different levels of risk. It's not the same to have, your name and your food preferences, and you have your name and bank account information. And all of these needs to be weighed when you publish data. And this is very important, a very important element. You need to understand the types of identifiers, personal identifiers that are in data, and they're direct and indirect. The direct are basically what identifies you, your name, your social security number, etc., email address, health plan, beneficiary plan, account numbers, license plate numbers, etc. Indirect is information that combined can disclose the identity of an individual. So if I have, your place of birth, the religion, the weight, your activities, or your employment, I may be able to identify this person even if you don't tell me the name or the precise address, because maybe you live in a small town, or you're talking about, if I say, a professor in natural hazards engineering, the Cockrell School of Engineering, and she's a female, well, people will have reduced amount of people, and they will say it's Ellen or so and so, and they will, be able to identify the person. So you have to gauge these two types of identifiers when you are thinking about publishing protected data. So these risks that we are talking about, and I want you to understand what is the risk of disclosing or getting protected data in the hands of people that should not be managing this data. Well, there's risk of data being accessed by unauthorized people, and these are risks that are technical, maybe technical in the digital environment or in the cyber infrastructure environment, and then there are human errors, like risk of you giving passwords to people that shouldn't have password, or somebody that is tampering with the data and you trust them and you gave them authorization or authorized them in your group. But of course, there's risk of data corruption and loss, risk of identity theft, risk of data being tampered with, meaning changed, or loose security practices. But I have to say that since inception, Design Safe has not had a data security incident. We have very secure storage, and I will talk more about it. We haven't had any security incident that of concern, even though like any supercomputing center, we are constantly trying to be attacked or hacked, but we have a very good, protection and very serious time invested and software invested in protecting the data. So what does that managing data in DesignSafe? Ellen has shown you that DesignSafe is not just a repository for data, but you can start managing from day one, from the day in which you plan how you're going to conduct your research, and you start uploading data in DesignSafe. So when you start planning your data, you store data in the data depot, in my project, or some people do it in my data. And that could be private for you and for your team. This means data is not published. You are gathering data in the field through the wrap-up, and you can automatically, the data will automatically go to the data depot in DesignSafe. Or maybe yourself store data in my projects or in my data, private to you or shared with your team. And that is private to you and maybe your team. But that data can have protected information, and that's what we will have to gauge how to store it. Then you're going to curate data, and that is also private. When you curate through the interface in DesignSafe, it's private to you and your team. But when you are publishing data, it's completely public out to the world. And when you reuse data from DesignSafe, it may be private again. It comes private again as you can use DesignSafe's workspace, etc., and you store the data and the results in my data or in my project. So as you can see, there are many instances that you have to consider. The private storage in DesignSafe, as you create a project, you ask prior to uploading data, what's the characteristic of your data? If you are going to have any issues with PII, FEMA, FERPA, etc., you will have to ask this little information, and I will get an email if your data has any type of restriction. So you have to assess when you are uploading data to DesignSafe from the field or maybe from your own project, whether this raw data, not curated data, has any risk. Is it HIPAA? Is it FERPA? What is it? So you can use the data depot, the DesignSafe data depot, when data is no HIPAA or FERPA, no data with national security information, no data that contains extremely sensitive information. If any of the above, you can consider using tax protected data storage. And I will talk to you about it. But tax protected data storage is not DesignSafe. In DesignSafe, you can upload PII light data and de-identified data. So if you have data with personal identifiable information, you can store it in my projects or my data. You will manage who others in your team are authorized to view this data. But because it's very safe, it's very secure. But if it's HIPAA or FERPA or data with national security or very extremely sensitive information, you will tell me through this this questionnaire. I will get an email, and we'll discuss what is convenient for you to do. If you have to store protected data in DesignSafe and TAC, remember what we said, it could be private to you, it could be private to the team. Once it's published, it's curated, de-identified, etc. But if it's with all these extra security restrictions that I told you, it's FERPA, you will, and you need or you want, you will use TAC protected storage. And this TAC protected storage complies with ISO and UT Austin security standards. But it's the responsibility of the PA to manage this account. It's not going to be Converge's responsibility, and it's not going to be DesignSafe responsibility. It's your responsibility to have this data. You will have to manage this storage. So then this is when you are storing and curating the data. So as I say, PII light data can be stored in the data depot. Everything that is not FERPA, HIPAA, or very extremely sensitive, you can share with your team members. Once you publish this data, the data will have to be curated and it's going to be de-identified. So it's curated, no HIPAA, FERPA, again, no PII, not more than 3 indirect identifiers that put together will not disclose the identity of the subject. You can use keys, and the keys should be explained, or identifiers in the data dictionary, and you will have to evaluate in context with the data size, geographic distribution, demographic distribution, etc., whether this data set becomes so I would say obscure that is not of use to anybody. So you have removed so many identifiers, you have removed all the personal identifiers, all the direct identifiers, you removed all the necessary direct identifiers. And if this data is completely unusable, we will offer another instance of publication. This means that you will get a DOI, you will get a landing page for your data, for the description of your data set, but the data will not be publicly available. People that really want to use your data will communicate with you, your email address will be there, and will ask for permission to use your data set. So, considerations during data management planning, and I am going back to the very beginning. You now know what it means to store and publish data in DesignSafe, and I have to say that these regulations are really out of ICPSR and many other social science repositories, so we are not reinventing the wheel here. These are the same concepts that are around for this type of data. But it is important to understand that for storing and publishing protected data, when you write your proposals, when you write your IRBs, think about what are most publication permissions that you can obtain from subjects, considering the characteristics and ethical constraints of your research. What permissions does your IRB support? And considering the interdisciplinary publications, and this is something that we will see, you are publishing human data that you may have removed, geographical identifiers, or you might have removed all of these, indirect and direct identifiers, but maybe your engineering colleagues are publishing geographically charged information about structures. So you really have to think how, if this creates a conflict here of being able to identify the subjects, because you may be interviewing people from a household and the structural engineers are looking into the destruction of that household. So you have to, collaborate with them in defining the privacy of the data. So this is up to here, and if you have questions, I am going to stop sharing and I will be glad to see if I can answer, and if I cannot answer, we'll find the answers together. So I'm sorry, PII Light, okay. PII Light means that, for example, you don't have social security numbers, but it's data that has not been de-identified, because this came basically when we were considering that you may be creating in the RAP app your surveys, and you are sending the data from the field to DesignSafe directly. And so you may be, asking what's your name, and what's your age, and this is your address. That's okay to store in DesignSafe. Before curating and de-identifying, you're storing, you are not publishing it. So that's what I call PII Light, but I should remove that and be more explicit. What I'm saying is that is okay, because we know our storage is secure. You have to make sure that you are sharing with a team. So you have to make sure that nobody in that team is going to, you know, oh, I will send you this file, you know, because in that case, you are more responsible. So that is, federal constraints is, I wanted to say, for example, national security or data that has to do with national security. So for example, in many disasters, this is what I learned, people that decide on a spot to survey, it's because there is their hospital, you know, their energy resources, and there are you know, key places, key infrastructure places, and those may not have to be disclosed, or maybe, you know, there's a what do you call it, a center that where the police department or things like that, that some people decide, oh, we should look into this area because and such. But at this moment, at this time, depending on the disaster, it might be something that really cannot be openly disclosed and shared. I have survey data that includes a question about whether respondents of their household members tested positive for COVID-19. We are planning to publish these data sets, of course, without PII. I'm sorry. But this discussion about HIPAA makes me wonder, is this legal? That is something that your IRB will really tell you. I cannot tell you that. I don't have the elements, and the IRB will tell you. In the IRB, you have the answer to that specific question. I have a large team and individuals have to keep up with their IRB training. Is it possible to keep track of this in Design Safe, adjust permissions for individual members to individual folders or files within the project? That can only be done in command line. That's a question more for a system administrator. I don't think that is feasible, you know, right off the bat automatically. That has to do with file permissions, and those are managed by the infrastructure team. I can ask that question, but I'm afraid that what you have to do is reinforce the policies or keep some things in my data.
Maria and Ellen, while we're on that, can you go ahead and answer the question that Tristan posed earlier? Because I know a lot of the people on this call have moved institutions and they have IRB approval attached to older data from an old institution. So what does Design Safe require in terms of, does Tristan have to go back to Oklahoma State to get the IRB from there? Will the initial approval do, what are Design Safe requirements?
First of all, is this still under that initial IRB? Is this project active?
Yeah, will you say,
no.
Tristan?
No, it's done, it's finalized. Okay, whatever you agreed with your first university, whatever that IRB told you, you sure have placed some information there about how you would publish the data, because in the IRB they ask you that question. Whatever you agree with them, that is what you have to abide.
Okay, so I have to go back to my IRB application, the approval, to see what the name is.
Yeah, read what you put there, remind what you said, and abide by that. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And I think this is what, with the social scientists on the team, I mean, I think we all know, especially as we start bringing more legacy data sets into Design Safe and not just fresh data sets, I think we're going to run into this a lot of times because there's so much variability with the IRB. So, I mean, Maria, I think your answer was right, like turning it back to us. But all of our IRBs function somewhat differently and ask different questions. And so I think this is going to be a bridge we're all going to be crossing together.
It would also be smart if you're planning to move institutions to publish all your data so that it's like housed in Design Safe, and then you could just access it in your new institution from Design Safe. Make your life easy.
I have legacy data still from New Zealand, and the ethics are slightly different there. Yes, I understand that. I think it will be on a case by case because we can apply a certain common sense, but the policy that we have is, for example, for PII is no direct identifiers up to X amount identifier. So we can look into that. So we have our own regulations, and we can look through your ethical considerations and what we can risk in design safe. Because we are also subjected to UT Austin. So sometimes we will have to go back to what UT Austin says. And there's an ITS security office that looks into what we are doing. So we can go back and say, how does this match? And then when it says that your institution didn't flag that, it means then that it should be okay. You're gonna say, you know, individual 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say the identifier has, and then we have to look into, for publishing it, we have to look into, is this individual identifiable, even if you don't put the name and the address, you know, because maybe you're saying, you know, which is ridiculous, but you say, surveyed, you know, people attack. And so there are only 100 employees. And maybe, you know, you put these indirect identifiers and you can detect, oh yes, tell Maria is the one that got the COVID, you know, but that is struggling a little bit.
Maria, thank you so much for that presentation, and thank you for your willingness to share your slides. And everybody at the workshop know that we're going to be hearing more from Maria momentarily, so keep these questions coming. And now we're going to turn it over to Craig and Mayar, who are going to show you the data model, as Ellen alluded to. So Craig and Mayar, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maria and Ellen. Those were fabulous presentations. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'd like my session to be as interactive as possible. So to start out with, can you guys all start to go on DesignSafe and get logged in? Make sure you're there. And while you're doing that, I'm going to show a couple things. Share my screen. So while you're all getting logged in, I wanted to show this project, which is ready to be published, and I threw together last night. This is a recreation of the project we made with Lori and that Ellen showed in her presentation. Essentially, if this is a cooking show, this is me showing the final product to incentivize following along. And so essentially we have a mission here to Mexico Beach, and we have all these different collections that are color-coded. The green ones are called research planning collections. We'll get into those later. We have an engineering geosciences collection and another research planning collection for the social sciences, and then social sciences collection. And I can expand these, see the files and the metadata that goes with each. And we have specific file tags for each one, each file. And I have locations. When we met with people last summer, we found that people really wanted to know where in the world this is happening immediately. So we have this quick link where I can click on this and open in Google Maps exactly where this is happening over here in Florida. And we have the data collectors, and here's the social science collection. We have a lot of metadata for social science, unit of analysis. This project is organized by unit of analysis, so each unit of analysis gets its own collection. Talking with you folks last summer, a lot of people will organize it differently based on different modes of collection, different sampling approaches, or just different dates of collection or different locations. This was all at the same location, but we had children interviewed in one collection and parents in the other. Okay. And I did want to show one other project that I really liked that is engineering so far, but it shows a lot of missions. And this person has 5 different missions to different parts of the world where they collected different data. And this shows the citation button right here. So you click on this button, you get an easy to copy citation. And if you click on an author name, you get their name, their email, institution, and on some of them, if they've entered it, you get their ORCID ID. Mitchell. Anyway, so I am hoping that you are all logged into DesignSafe and at the homepage. I guess I can look for thumbs up from folks when they're caught up to where I'm at. And so from here, we're going to click on the research workbench, and we're going to click on Data Depot. And I'm going to assume that you guys know nothing. So if I sound redundant, that's on purpose. I just really want to show off the details of the interface and some of the tricks we have. Looks like I was logged out. Let me log in real quick. Okay, here I am in the Data Depot. I'm in My Data. I could also be in My Projects or any of these areas. This button here in the top left will appear in all of those, and it includes some options to upload files and also to add new folders and add new projects. This button is what I want you guys to click on. So you're going to click Add a New Project, and then you're going to enter in a project title, enter in a PI, and
oh, Craig, can I say something to our participants about the project title that came up last time? And I noticed this in a lot of the wonderful data templates that everybody posted. So to all of the data ambassadors on the call, so one of the things we talked about is I know that our impulse is oftentimes like for the difference between like a project title like we would use for a grant or a journal article versus a project title that's trying to capture data. And so Craig, will you pick up where I just stopped and give then the guidance about how we should be thinking about titling our data projects as opposed to how we think about maybe naming a journal article? Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, title it in a way that anybody can understand it. We have some help text here, talk about the project's focus, any hazard model system research approach, and be sure to define all acronyms. We'll get into the project description later, which I want to go over in detail on how to make other people really understand your project, and your project description might be different than how you might word it in paper. Because we want to really curate this for a general audience, someone that maybe has never looked at social science work before, okay? So I'm gonna add in myself as the PI. These two are required for now. So this is a very bare bones field entry right here. That's because we wanna make it simple for people to just create a project. We'll get to curation later. As Ellen was saying, a lot of people just use projects as a shared space and they don't ever go to publishing. So we want to make it easy for people to just create a shared space and add people that can access the shared space, which is the project members down here. So for now, I will click Add Project, and it will take me into the project. And then if people can just give a thumbs up when they're in the project. I think there's the feature on Zoom where you can add a reaction and your thumbs up will stay for a little bit. Okay, looks like Maria's there. Seeing other people.
Hey, Greg, while you have this live going on, do you know why does DesignSafe have this issue of loading? Like sometimes it seems like it takes a long time to load.
Yeah, that's just our backend with Tapas, our API. If Keith was here, he could answer that question better. But sometimes it will fail and then it will just keep trying. Also, I think the fact that we're all adding projects at once might put a little bit of strain on it. But it looks like some people are still reaching the next step, which is good. And I will say it frustrates me at times, and I am
always asking about what we can do to streamline that so that we don't see that for too long.
Yeah. Okay, let me just go ahead. Maybe I'll be added in the background, but I'll go to one that I already made earlier. Oh, it looks like, okay, here it is. So sometimes there's quirks on Design Safe. There's ways around it if it gets stuck in the loading zone. What I did there is I just went to My Projects, which is where it will show up in the future. And I see it added right here. And I click on it and it opened, no problem. So there's a couple quirks which I'll be pointing out here and there. Just bear with us. Okay, so here is a bare bones project. I can add files here. And let's go ahead and do that. So the add button, which we used before, is up here. So I want you all to go ahead and click on that. We're gonna click on File Upload. We're gonna choose Files. And I have some files here I'll select. And click Begin Upload. And I can select some more if I'd like. But these ones should be uploaded. So we have here some files. And sometimes when you upload, sometimes it will fail. If you upload a whole bunch of files, just a couple individual files will fail, but then there's a retry button. Just click that retry button, and every time I've clicked on that, it will upload the files that it missed the first time properly. So here we are in a basic project. I have not said that it's field research yet. I'm going to click on Edit Project, and I'm going to click on here on this button that says Change Project Type. Okay. And here we have the options for all the different data models: experiment, simulation, hybrid, and then at the bottom we have field research and other. So I hope a lot of you have been thinking about whether yours is going to fit either field research or other. Field research is simply for work that's been done in the field. A lot of people I know will be publishing via other, and that's very basic and bare bones. I'll show both real quick, but it's good to know about both because you are all data ambassadors and you need to tell others about the capabilities. So I'm going to select field research to start. I'm going to click continue. We have a basic overview that gives definitions. Here we have a definition of a mission that I think is better than the one Ellen gave, because at the end it says some researchers may refer to missions using terms such as time one, wave one, etc. So that's just to know that you to know that we're always thinking about you and trying to accommodate your definitions as well. Collections, relating data, and file tags. We'll get to all these in a second. You can continue through this overview, and you can get back to this overview at any time. So we won't spend too much time here. It just goes over the definitions of each of the components of curation. It gives example files that you might put in each collection, definitions, and at the end, it has a really nice best practices session. These are things that Maria and I have learned from working with users that make your project look as good as possible. Publish in interoperable formats like CSV. Consider why you're publishing raw data. A lot of people will publish too much raw data. Don't publish zip files because it's difficult to unzip the files and view your data from a glance if other people are viewing your publication. And don't use too many nested folders. A lot of people will nest deep in folders. Try to lay things as flat as possible so that people can view your files quickly at a glance. Okay, so I'm going to click continue. This is what Maria was talking about with asking whether you're going to be uploading protected data or not. You can say no, only non-confidential. Some guidelines you can agree to, or you have to agree to, sorry. And now we come into a different edit project window, which has much more metadata required. And so we have the PI up here. Down here we have event. So we'll say Hurricane Harvey. Event dates. This was back, I think, in 2018 in October. And Florida. And we'll just enter lat longs right there, event type, hurricane. You can add multiple event types and keywords and a project description, which I have some more Ipsum text I will copy. And then once we have all the required fields filled out, you can hit update project. And please just put, if you can't think of a keyword right now, just put the word placeholder and come back to this later. The point of my session is for you to just follow along and understand the interface. So don't worry about being detailed right now. Just put in placeholder text for the time being you would like to keep up. And click update project. Now, sometimes the metadata won't display immediately. This is just a quirk of the interface. I will click refresh up here and it will display. There we go. So we have the project type, we have the event, the lat long, event type, the keywords, the description, and yeah. So is everyone up to this point? Any questions so far? And if you guys have questions at any point, just feel free to ask them. I don't care about going off on tangents. So just give a thumbs up reaction emoji.
I just want to ask a quick question. Is anyone still having a problem with the professional profile? Or are we all through that?
Oh, I didn't check the chat. Are people having problems?
That's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I'm taking that as a yes. Thank you.
Okay. So from here, I have 3 steps: add missions, add collections, and relate data. I'm going to switch over to the project I worked on last night, which has all these filled out. And we're going to go over each of those buttons. So add missions is where you add missions. There's certain metadata for missions. Remember that each mission gets its own DOI. So choose that how you would to organize a project. You have dates of mission. You have authorship. So authorship takes the list of all the project members that you've added and brings them in here and then has them selectable for as authors. Mission site location. So this is a more specific location of where you went on your mission, not where the entire hurricane kind of took place. And description. Here I added this one earlier. So it appears below after I've added it. And we have the authors, date of mission. And if I want to update it, I click edit, brings me up to the top. I have all the fields entered and I can change something, change the text, and click update. Okay, so if ever go ahead and create a mission. For those of you that are doing field research, go ahead and create a mission. And while you are all doing that, I will talk to the people that have maybe made an other project. So if you chose other, there's no 1, 2 steps, 1, 2, 3 over here because it's very basic and bare bones. But what you have is you have your files here and you have file tags. And we've recently added a whole bunch of file tags that are specific to social scientists here. And you can find them here in this dropdown. So you see instrument, you see secondary data analysis, and I think there's a couple other ones here that are specific to social scientists. So go ahead and do that. And also when you do your project information, there's a very important step here. It says data type, nature or genre of the content. Be sure to click social sciences for this. And this is so that when your publication finally appears in the listing, it is specifically a social sciences other type and not a Jupyter Notebook or something else, okay? For those of you that are republishing data that's already been published before, related work is a great way to link back to that original publication that you got your data from. So if I put in a title here and a link to where it is. It will appear at the top, and I can link to it, and people can quickly get to it from viewing my publication to see the source data. Okay, so for those in the other publication, go ahead and just tag your files. And yeah.
And Craig, I know this came up in the last one about what if somebody's not studying an event? What do they do if they don't have an event? And then Maria Watson asked the question about what if you have multiple events?
So we're working on getting the metadata updated to reflect that currently.
We are working on it. Thanks
Yeah.
to your considerations the other time. So we are not making the natural hazard event as required. Only those that have an event will have to fill that. But we are not there yet in terms of we could change it quite yet. And also, I didn't want to change it so fast. I wanted to hear these also and see if there are other changes that we need to make.
So we're currently making change to make this field here not required, and that will make it easier. Okay. So has everybody added mission? Can you give a thumbs up? Okay. Great. So after adding a mission, we're going to add collections. Okay. So you select a collection type. We have research planning, engineering, social sciences, and documents. So research planning is everything related to planning and logistics, administration, design, IRB, or permits. When we met with y'all last summer, we found that people really value these documents, so we really wanted to set them apart from the other documents so that they were easy to find. For this collection, you just have a title, who collected the data or created the documents, another option for reference data, and a description. And this is a collection that can belong to both engineers and social scientists. So it doesn't have anything that's specific to both. It can be used by, so it can be used by both. And then social sciences collection, as I showed you earlier, there's a lot of metadata for it. A lot of it is optional, unit of analysis, modes of collection, sampling approach. You can have multiple sampling approaches, and one sample size, and dates of collection. Data collectors, who specifically collected this data. So this isn't, this list comes from whoever you chose for your mission authors. And then you can say, well, Craig specifically collected this data, even though Craig and Maria are both authors on the entire mission. Equipment, we have a huge list of equipment thanks to the RAP app. And down here we have social science equipment, which I believe will be growing. And if you need to enter a custom piece of equipment, click on Other here at the top, and it will turn this into something you can write yourself. Restriction, reference data again, description. And again, at the bottom here is my inventory. I can edit these, and I can just click here, edit, and it will bring up all the texts. And then once I've edited that text, I just click update, okay? So if everybody could just work on creating a couple collections, maybe like a research planning and maybe a social sciences collection. And for those of you that are over in the other data model, I think it's really important to discuss writing a good project description. And I have 4 questions that I'm going to enter into the chat. I just have to stop sharing real quick. 4 questions. What is this project about? How can data in this project be reused? How is this project unique? And who is the audience? So be thinking about those 4 questions and start maybe typing out your description. And I'll go back to sharing my screen.
You say the 4 questions again really quick, Craig.
Oh, they're over in the chat.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yes. And okay, so has everybody added at least one collection so far? Get some amens. Okay. I know there's a lot of metadata, so maybe I'll give it a minute before I keep going. A couple quirks to this interface here. Try not to click out of the modal, or it will exit the modal without saving the work. You have to click the green button, the update button, to save it. Nathaniel is very used to this, and we are working on fixing it so that you cannot exit the modal unless you click the X button at the top. But currently, you might accidentally click out of the modal, so try not to do that. That's one quirk. I know Nathaniel was saying that he likes to write his descriptions in a Word document so that he can have proper spell check, and then just copy and paste them over here into the description field.
That saved me many times.
Yes, but we're working on that fix, but just bear with us in the meantime.
I think it's just good if even if you fix it, it's still, I found it to be a good way to keep track of what I'm doing.
Right. Okay, I'm going to assume everyone's at least added one collection. Again, you can use placeholder text just for now, just to make sure that you keep up, and maybe just add a research planning collection for now, which is very basic metadata. Oh, and I should go over the documents collection. So the documents collection they exist outside of a mission. Let me go over and show that again real quick. And they get their own DOI. So this is for people that want to publish before a mission or in between missions, and want a separate DOI for specific documents. So here, this is a virtual reconnaissance. There's requirements by NSF to publish these beforehand. So you can see here that a DOI and citation will appear when published, and it's outside of the mission over here, okay? And that's just also very basic metadata. It can be used by both engineers and social scientists. Okay, so next, I'm going to move on. We have relate data. I'm going to click on this button, and this is kind of organizing the project relationally, saying what collections belong in which missions, because a lot of people have multiple missions, and how they're ordered, what other collections they're next to, and for documents collections where you want that to appear, if you want it to appear at the beginning, or you want it to appear at the end as kind of an appendices, however you like. It's very customizable. So here we have the mission, and I've already selected collections. So you select a collection with the drop down. You say, okay, in this mission we had the children interview, the parents interview, the pictures of the fallen water tower, and so on and so forth. And then you can reorder them with the arrows. You can remove them. It's fairly self-explanatory. And what's nice is people viewing your project will be able to see this quickly if they want to get a quick glance of the entire project if you have a lot of missions and a lot of nested collections. Okay. So give a little time for people to get caught up to this point. And again, if you let me know if you're having any issues, you can even speak out and you don't have to type or chat. Because I don't think I can see the chat. Oh, I can, okay. Okay, Ellen's answering the questions, good. Okay, is everybody caught up? Can everyone give maybe a thumbs up or a nod? Anything? Okay. All right, cool. Everything else caught up? All right. We're gonna keep going with the last part, which is file tags. So, or hold on, we're not quite there. So you have all your files here, and I've already done this, as you can see. You have all these colors by each of the files, and this is designating which files go into which collection. So this recording, this questionnaire, these go all into the collection about interviewing parents, okay? And I can do that. I'll show how to do it with these dummy files here. So let's say I want these files, these 3 files to go into the research planning collection. So I'm going to click on all 3 of them. I'm going to say all 3 of these files belong to the interviewer preparation collection. And then I click save. And it will be applied to all 3 of them. Okay. Now, after you've added it to collection, there are specific file tags for each different collection. So over here in interview preparation, we have all these different file tags, training, IRB, permits, protocols, so on and so forth. And then for a social sciences collection, you would see a different list of file tags. Image, instrument, raw data, report. These are all optional, but they're highly recommended. And it's really helpful for our search engine to be able to look up files if you specifically say that they're images, audio, or instruments. They'll really help our search, and it'll really help the discoverability of your publication in the long term. So it might seem redundant saying that a recording is audio, but just do it, because it's really going to help our back end and really help people that are looking at your publication to quickly glance and see and identify certain files. Okay. So we've gone over how to put the files in the collections, and we've added the file tags. And so then as you're doing this, you go over to publication preview and you check in to make sure that the changes you made are reflected. So let's see if those 3 files got added to interview preparation. Here they are, 1, 2, 3. That's good to go, okay? And let's say I'm ready to publish. I've proofread everything, because that's very important as well. And again, multiple people can see this project. So maybe ask your PI or another project member to come in and look at things and proofread the metadata. And they can do all the editing too. So I'm going to click prepare to publish when I'm ready to publish. We remind people of the best practices, just because we really want to emphasize a lot of these. We click prepare to publish. And I don't want you guys to follow along for these steps. Just watch here on the screen, because I don't want you guys to accidentally click publish, but and there's certain requirements of you have to have all the different collections made before you get to these steps. So just follow along for this on my screen. So I'm going to say I want to publish this mission, and I want to publish this documents collection with all my virtual reconnaissance. I can deselect certain files if there was a file that accidentally got added to a collection that I don't want to publish. And I can click continue. This is just a proofread and emphasize you can't make changes after publishing. Please proofread, but if you happen to make a mistake, send a ticket in and we might be able to retroactively fix the mistake. Proofread mission, proofread collections, order your authors. So here you'll see a preview of your citation. And it's kind of like done like a chapter in a book, so that you say, this is Mexico Beach in hurricane microstructural damage and population resilience. And we have the 2 authors, and we can reorder them. So let's say I want Maria's name to come first. She did the most work. And I click save, and I see that reflected here on my citation. And you can do it for whatever else you're publishing as well. You can publish multiple missions at the same time. And we click continue. Now we select licenses. And a lot of this, some of this is for software. You won't be concerned about that. But for data sets and works, papers, presentations, designs, choose between these. So you have the option of this one or this one. And then for works, you have an option of this one or this one. And they're kind of, one is much more open and anybody can use it, and the other has certain stipulations. So And then once you're ready to go, you click request DOI on publish and you turn both keys to launch the nukes, and it's and then you will receive an email. You have to wait a little bit, and then it will eventually appear over here and published. And that's pretty much it. Any questions so far? Or any questions at all?
Craig, what do people do if they're midway through and they run into something that they think's a bug or may not be a bug, they're just stalled out? How do they get help from you?
Yes, so there's two ways to get help. If you need help with organizing your data and just kind of thinking about the metadata and curation, you can attend office hours with Maria, which we're going to talk about later today. And to get to that version of help, you go to Learning Center, you go to Education and Training, and you go down here and it says virtual office hours, and you say connect to office hours, and either Maria or sometimes myself will be on there, and we can help you on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2. Also, if you're having a bug and something's not appearing right and you need to report that, go over to help and say submit a ticket. And describe your problem. What's nice about this is this reaches the ears of the developers who fix the bugs, and will give them a lot more incentive to fix any bugs that come up. So feel free to give us some tickets, and don't worry about hurting our feelings. So.
Nice, Craig. Thank you for giving us that grand tour, and it's all so elegant and intuitive. I know it's a lot for those of us who haven't been in Design Safe yet, but just thank you so much for making this all so intuitive. And so I think, Craig, I know we're sort of getting at time, but I can definitely shorten the closing section. And so if people do have questions for Craig or Mayar, I don't know if you want to share your screen right now to talk a little more about some capabilities, and then we'll transition to Maria.
Oh, yeah, let me.
Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
Here. Wanna bring here and okay, so I want to first of all start by talking about the data transfer methods. So we've Craig already covered the web browser type of web browser based file uploads to Data Depot. So whether it's my data or my projects, you can essentially click and upload your files. However, there is limitations when it comes to bringing files through the browser transfer. So, and it's usually limited to like 100 megabytes of size. Or if you have like numerous number of files and directories, maybe in this case, example of like 25 files or directories, then we would kind of like would like to kind of like recommend other types of data transfers into Design Safe and the file systems that are handling all of the data sets residing in this data repository. As you can see in here, so first of all, under the user guides, you would be able to find a lot of helpful informations. Particularly under the data transfer guides, you will see a lot of different mechanisms that you will be able to bring your data in case there are large so the one that we recommend is actually Globus. It's very simple once you actually follow the procedure to enable Globus for your Design Safe account. So you can kind of like go to the data transfer guide from here and follow on in case you will be needing to bring in large data sets. Once you're there, you should be, once you have set up your Globus, you should be seeing some kind of like these type of interfaces where you can kind of like have your desktop on a one endpoint or any other computer that you have your data on. And then your tag Corral file system, which is essentially the data, the design safe under one particular path. Your My Data or My Projects all can be accessed through particular paths, which are defined under the transfer guide. And you should be able to transfer files by simply just clicking and dragging and dropping one file onto another path to bring in data in to design safe. So it's very, very easy to use once you get to follow the instructions to install, to essentially set it up for your account. We do also have like other methods like CyberDoc as well as command line transfers. So if you're kind of like want to take advantage of the command line interfaces, you can use SCP or rsync by actually SSH into the file system and transfer from your computer into actually the design safe repository. So next, I wanted to kind of like talk with and ask like in terms of the database and the data that you are bringing for the publishing might be right now when you think of the data repository, it's in the end stage of the research. But as we mentioned in this kind of like workshop, we support end-to-end research workflows. So we do offer a lot of tools that would be helpful for you guys maybe to use to handle your full research life cycle. So in this case, we do offer data processing applications and to be specific, MATLAB, if you have your own institution's license, and Jupyter, which is essentially allows you in a web application type of format to have live codes in Python and R to do statistical analysis. So in this case, you can kind of like launch, and as you can see, all of the parts for the design safe are listed here. The My Data, the community data, even the published the data sets are all here and accessible. And this is where you can actually start developing your statistical analysis and maybe machine learning type of algorithms if you have data sets that you would be interested in performing your analysis on. So you could kind of like start developing your codes and running them on this server. So one particular example case that I kind of like worked was this data set. So this is a kind of like an example reuse of a data that was already published. So in this case, researchers kind of like collected appreciable data on the residential buildings damages during the Hurricane Harvey. And I went and grabbed the building assessment data set that they published, brought it into my kind of like data, and started working on that to perform a machine learning to actually kind of like assess the damages that are happening to each building according to that. So in terms of the data set, that was actually very similar to actually what I've heard like Steve was kind of like having in terms of the building inventories. So it has all these different columns and so on, and you would be able to visualize the data sets as well. So that so the next one that I wanted to kind of like focus is the HasMapper application, where you can actually visualize some of the some particular formats of the data. So under this particular data set can be visualizable on the HazMapper, and here is how that particular data set is visualized. This is a GeoJSON file of the building inventories that are collected after Hurricane Harvey, and they have along with a lot of information with the buildings are the pictures as well, and you would be able to kind of like browse through the database, these data sets, and to actually see how the performance of the buildings after the hurricane and so on, along with all the metadata that are associated with it in this particular example. So I kind of like went through it in the HazMapper. I looked through the data set and I realized that, okay, I can do this type of reuse on this particular data set in the Jupyter environment, bringing in pandas and scikit-learn and machine learning packages that are that provides the ability to pursue these kind of things. So yeah, you would be able to visualize a lot of different types of files, the GeoJSON files, GPS tracks, and also you would be able to visualize point cloud data sets as well. So not sure if this kind of like be a very something that a lot of social scientists are using, but you would be able to kind of like visualize the point clouds as well in this HazMapper application. And this is particularly a data set for after a Ridgecrest earthquake in California, and they are trying to kind of like capture the fault traces after that particular event. So yeah, you can kind of like visualize the point cloud data sets as well, the pictures and the metadata associated with that. So with that being said, I also want to point that HazMapper currently doesn't support shapefiles, but in future we are actively working on that, and hopefully in very near future we would be handling visualization of the shapefiles. And also the next workspace visualization application that I want to offer is the QGIS, which you would be able to launch on an interactive session on a virtual machine, and where you can kind of like essentially work with your geospatial type of data sets, whether it's a shapefile or a raster file. You would be able to start your actual analysis in here. So without the actual need to download the data and get back between your local station and on the cloud inside the design phase. So with that being said, I would like to kind of like stop and see if you guys actually have any particular questions that you might be interested in these type of applications. Okay, so any questions in terms of like the applications that you may kind of like feel in future you may need? Or I know that one particular kind of like example is that usually in Jupyter you will need to bring in like various packages, and we may not have that right now on our Jupyter servers, but we could work with you guys to bring it in to make sure that we do support all of the packages that you might need for your statistical analysis or any particular visualization type of features that you would be interested.
Thank you, Mayar. So I think that this is fantastic, and thank you for giving the data ambassadors a sense of the capabilities and just letting us meet you. So if people do have questions in the future, they know to turn to you. So thank you so much for that. And I think now we're going to turn it back over to Maria so she can let us know how we can get help so we can move forward. So Maria, over to you. Oh, and Maria, you're muted.
Okay. So before I present a little bit more about the impact of published data, you will see in the templates that we have really reserve times for you to come over to office hours. So we have office hours twice a week, virtual office hours, every Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 2. And we have made a schedule and register online so that I know and you know. We have given 4 months, so you have ample time to come and discuss your data issues or your data questions. You may reserve 2 slots. I divide it in half-hour slots. Normally it is enough, but if you have, you can reserve, you know, 2 half hours, or you can reserve, like Rachel came 1 week and then she came, you know, 2 weeks after, and Lori the same. So this will help you be with more confidence, publish with more confidence. We can review the content, we can review the structure, we can, you know, decide, because you have, you know, data sets that you may have doubts about how to compartmentalize them. I have looked at all your templates, and I think that beyond the sheets, the fact sheets, most of your data will fit in the field research. But if it's just one, you know, one survey or one publication, it may go into the other data model. So we can discuss that during office hours. How to structure your data, how to organize your data. Although if you read carefully throughout the interface design, Craig has put a lot of helpers for you to think through that process. I mean, we tried to help you think through that process, and even you can, you know, draft how you want to organize your data, especially when you have waves, which we call missions, but you can still, you know, title them as waves. Or when you have, you know, surveys that are regional, you can, you know, decide that each mission is a region. Or you have, you know, data from different states, you may divide it as states. If you want to have a DOI for every mission or not, how you can organize your data, how you can data as you go. You know, your project, you publish this data set today. Within that same project, you publish another data set, you know, 3 months from today. So we can walk through all of these, you know, doubts. And I will just take a little bit of time to talk about the impact, of published data, because that has been questions, and you have asked me questions in the chat about this. So, you know, what's up with this publishing, you know, data revolution or whatever? Why do we need to publish research data? So the push to publish data operates under the umbrella of the movement, whose premise is that data should be free as much as possible, free of limitations to access and reuse, and also free of cost. But open data, of course, promotes transparency, accountability, broader participation, and leads to more discoveries. In the academic context, data publication in institutional and domain digital repositories implies that we are preserving the scientific record as evidence of the research activity and promoting research validation. But for this to happen, data has to accurately represent the research process. And this involves significant work from a multidisciplinary team that curates the data in order to publish it. And we feel like we are partners in this process with you. But we understand that this takes a lot of time. So, you know, what is it that we also need to have for the researchers? So the researchers also get credit for the work. It promotes your work, and you should consider a data citation as important as a paper citation and link them together. So there are, you know, parts and components to this process, and the DOI is one of them. The DOI is a technical component, but it really adds to that getting credit, getting recognized, and distributing your work. The DOIs are really a system, you know, it's a technology, but it's a system that provides technical and social infrastructure for the registration and use of persistent interoperable identifiers, called DOIs, for use in digital networks. It's an alphanumeric string that permanently resolves to the landing page or the URL where the data is described and made available. So it doesn't matter if tomorrow DesignSafe is not called DesignSafe anymore. Your data will always be resolvable to a landing page. We agree, this is why it's a system, because it's supported by technical and organizational efforts. It's a permanent identifier. And what does DOIs do? Why they're so important to expose your work? DOIs are attached to metadata. This is metadata about your work. It's metadata that you are entering, your name, the authors, the title, the description. And this metadata is exposed through web protocols, things that you don't see, but that really happen. Academic, this was a question, and hopefully Google search, Google Data, and Google Scholar indexes that metadata. And you can see, to your right, that there is how users, this is how users find your web using common browsers and Google Data Search, just Google Search and Google Data. So here I posted some examples, and this is Food Access Impact Survey for the Southeast, blah, blah, blah. It's published in DesignSafe because people put, these Food Access Survey Instrument Southeast data set, and we get here in the common Google search. So this is how people find your data. And good metadata, of course, improves the search and improves the probability of your data to be findable by people that might not be even thinking or looking for your data. So this is important. This is how we distribute, how we help distribute and market your work. This marketing doesn't happen only on the side of DesignSafe. You have to push it, you have to work, you have to promote your work. And that is done by including the data citation in your papers in the reference section with the DOI. So do not just mention, oh, we use this data in the text and put a DOI in the text. No, always the complete citation that you can pick up from the landing page has to be placed in the reference sections, just like any other publication. Always cite your data and the data of others using the complete citation and including the DOI. That is how you can promote your work. Also present about your data at conferences, because we have learned from researchers that the way that they reuse data is because they hear about these prestigious data sets at conferences. So make sure use social media to announce your data, publication with the DOI, use your site, your website, pages to include citations and news about your data, always including the DOI and the complete reference. Cross-referencing, meaning adding this information in various websites, bumps your data ratings up on the web. I also think that we have to be ambassadors for all data. So include the citation of data that you reuse as well in DesignSafe using the related work and the related data as appropriate, as Craig explained you. And I'm sorry, I have a stable connection. When reusing data in your projects, and you already do quite a lot because we can see that you use FEMA data, that you use, NOAA data. So you do reuse a lot of data, even if you transform it into something different, you really have to cite those data sets for provenance, for accountability. You really have to mention, in this project, I use this and this and this data, reference it, and be aware of existing licenses and permissions. So the way in which you will license, the way in which this data originally is licensed is the way in which you can use it and republish something that uses that data. And of course, this will also, this has to do with how you license your own data for others to reuse. We also want you to publish the static data derived from. This is when you reuse data from others and publish a paper, not only you have to cite the data in your publications, but you have used, but it will be great if you can publish that synthetic data. This means that you have used, you probably did a lot of to repurpose that data. We saw neural networks being used, etc. You probably selected a subset of a bigger data set. Please try, if possible, if the licenses permit you, to republish that data in DesignSafe and reference the reused data in your publications. We are counting. We are, at this time, we are counting citations, and you can see here some of our statistics. We are counting data citation, data alerts, and we are doing this right now to understand the impact of the data. So we are counting the citations, the times that people cite data in DesignSafe. They reference the data with their DOIs, etc. And these are some of the statistics. So as you can see, original data is the data that you publish a paper with, and that you publish the paper and you publish the data set. Then people cite DesignSafe as a platform. There are also reports, and people do reuse data for validation, learning, and we are trying to keep statistics about that. And we will keep statistics as we see that you cite DesignSafe data in your papers, whether they are social science or interdisciplinary, we will count that. And in the next future, you will be able to see how many times people have downloaded, previewed, or copied and direct reuse of your data in DesignSafe. This will be in the next future. So, my last message here, and I'm sorry I'm going very fast because I know we need more time for you to ask questions, but sign up for Publish Your Data event dedicated office hours, and you have the link, or come to office hours when needed. And if you cannot abide to Thursdays and Tuesdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Central, shoot me an email or use the help ticket and let me know that this is impossible, and we will schedule another visit with you. We are trying to be as flexible as we can be. So I'm sorry I was like this. Do you have questions in regards of what I just said? I don't see.
Nathaniel's doing clapping hands, as always. Questions?
I do want to reinforce something that that Lori said, which is Maria, Craig, Maihar are very patient with users. We are very open to helping you do what you want to do. And I think, you know, Nathaniel and I had a discussion of, well, you know, why would people use DesignSafe relative to those 5 letters, ICPSR? I can never put them in the right order, but did I get it right, Laura?
You did.
You know, if in some ways we provide very similar things, in some ways they provide a bit more in terms of the metrics, but we are very responsive to our users. I guess we probably have a smaller user base. We're obviously natural hazard specific, but really we are very user centric to help you do what you want to do. And if you can't do it on the front end, we'll get it done on the back end. So don't be afraid to ask.
There was a question related to aggregators and who indexes us. So I think I partially answered that, but because we register our DOIs with DataCite, they are the ones exposing all the metadata, and that is indexed by many very prestigious aggregators. So that is the most secure way. Once we have a DOI, DataCite exposes that metadata, and they have specific academic aggregators as well as Google Data Search and Google Scholar that index that metadata. Then I had another question about the relationship between Harvard Dataverse and our repository. So when you consider, so we have to store data. So Design Safe, except for the cases in which you will be publishing metadata about very restricted data, you have to have, but you will probably, still publish a summary or maybe survey instruments. We publish data. Harvard Dataverse allows you to publish metadata, but what you have to think here is that, is it convenient to have 2 citations that have 2 DOIs? Isn't that confusing? So the best thing to do is you select, for example, you can always reference a project, you can relate data, you can relate works, but when you decide where to publish data, in my view, it is better to just select one repository, because that is your formal citation and it's where the repository will live. One of the things that I find important is that when you select a repository, if you select a general purpose repository, or if you select a repository where you are amongst your peers. And I think that's important. And that has been the vision of the interdisciplinary data model. The vision was that if somebody is looking for Hurricane Harvey, for example, or looking for, I don't know, diseases related to, to natural disasters, then you can find everything in one place, and you will find the view of the engineer, you will find the view of the scientist, you will find the view of the urban planner. Instead, when you go to a general purpose repository, you have anything under the sun, and that's sometimes confusing to find this community of related data. That's just my perspective. It's a personal perspective. There are different services and features, and one is, it depends.
Maria, thank you so much for that, and just thank you for starting to introduce some of these thorny issues that I know that everyone is grappling with. And so one of the things I would definitely recommend is, for example, like Alex, what you asked earlier about just what if my data is de-identified to the extent where it may cease to make sense. I think making one of those early appointments with Maria and Craig, talking to them on the before just really talking to them about the project, that's something we found really helpful. So Maria, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for getting all those sign up times up there so we can come and visit you before, when we're in the midst of it, and hopefully celebrate with you after we publish our data and our instruments. And to that end, in the last 15 minutes that we have together today, what we're going to do is we're actually going to talk a bit about the inaugural Data Ambassador Program that you all are, we're so grateful that you are now a part of, and that you're at the vanguard of all of this. So again, just thank you to the Design Safe team for the extraordinary amount of information. And so Design Safe and Converge, we wanted to close out today by talking to you about this Data Ambassador Program. And in the course of our conversation today, I already have 2 extra things that hopefully won't be a heavy lift, but I'm going to add to this checklist that I emailed out to all of you. So to Ellen's earlier request, that we all make sure and set up our profiles within Design Safe so that there really is this recognition that the social and behavioral science community that you are all leaders of are taking advantage of this. So I'm going to add that to the checklist. And then also, Maria, I'm going to add the market your work about once you've got that data publication, doing something to share it with others. So again, thank you so much for that. And future data ambassadors, this check sheet is going to be key, and we're going to walk through it in a second. But first, we just, Design Safe and Converge wanted to say to all of you why we're so eager to launch this data ambassador program. You've been hearing about this all day today, which is the big picture goal is we want to help advance social science and interdisciplinary hazards and disaster research by helping others to find and curate their data, to share their legacy as well as their new data. And I actually want to linger on that one for a second, because thanks to Sarah McBride, who leads the Social Science Working Group for the U.S. Geological Survey, it was actually during a USGS call that this idea of how important it is for us as social scientists to share our legacy data came to the fore, because Jeanette Sutton was on the call and she was sharing about how she was had called Ron Iguchi, and he'd done this survey like 30 years ago, and he said, Jeanette, all those surveys were sitting in a box in my garage and I was getting ready to throw them out. And so it's this idea, right, of leaders in our field, all the amazing things that have happened over the years. How can we help to protect that legacy data so that current and future generations can use that, but also how can we encourage the publication of new data? Also, the data ambassadors are really going to help others to coordinate with other researchers, both in the context of teams with that private data sharing options that Dave Hondula was asking about, that'll help facilitate project-based work, but also public data sharing, and then encouraging more scientific replication. So studies across disaster types, across geographic locations, the things that Lauren Clay is trying to do by getting researchers to publish their instruments so that we're moving towards scientific replication and less of that duplication. And then also, of course, to get credit for the amazing work that you and your students and others are doing while advancing science and practice. And so how are we actually going to go about becoming data ambassadors? And so I actually want to return to something that you all shared when you submitted your applications way back in January, February for this event. So I'm going to show you, let me get over there, sorry. Sorry, Zoom is always moving around. So I want to show you something that you all said when you applied. Are you seeing right now my Google Docs screen with the Excel file? Mm-hmm. Very nice, thank you. So one of the questions we asked when we sent out the application for this Publisher Data event was we asked you all to both share what are the groups or organizations that you could see yourself sharing the information that you've attained today? Who could you see yourself sharing that with to help amplify the impact? And how might you see yourself going about this? So this is the early part of the year. So Lauren Clay shared National Academies of Sciences, the Gulf Research Program through the Disaster Research Center and NYU's PR Squared program that she's affiliated with both of those, doing webinars, in-person trainings. Alex Greer said that he would share it at his home university at the University at Albany College of Emergency Preparedness, Homeland Security, and Cybersecurity. So both with the graduate and undergraduate students who are there, but then he also noted that he would share through grant proposals and working with the many collaborators. Tristan Wu said that he would bring this to the University of North Texas Disaster Science Research Lab, to the Inspire Texas Network, to Impact 360 Alliance, and again would write Design Safe into his future grant proposals and share with collaborators. Sarah McBride promised that she's going to bring this to our USGS Social Science Working Group and with the EERI networks. Dave Handula, it said with Arizona State University Knowledge Exchange for Resilience, American Meteorological Society's Board of Environment and Health, and with the upcoming 2023 International Congress on Biometeorology. Steve French promised to bring it to Georgia Tech. Nathaniel, and also to share with students and colleagues there. Nathaniel Rosenheim and Maria Watson both have already been bringing this to the 100+ strong NIST Center of Excellence, as well as to the Texas A&M Hazard Reduction and Recovery Center. And then I said I would bring it to Converge, the SCER network, the Natural Hazard Center networks. And then one of the methods I was really excited about that came about through one of our organizing committee meetings was to share this with other early career investigators and encourage others to apply for NSF workshop grants. Because one of the things we talked about was, what if Nathaniel leads a regional one of these for Texas? What if Dave Handula leads one of these for Arizona? Lauren Clay for the East Coast centers that she's affiliated with, and so forth. So if anybody out there is interested in doing an NSF workshop and doing one of these events, we were hoping that we might, again, continue to grow the web. And so with this data ambassador program, what are we hoping you're going to do? At the end of the day, we're hoping that you're going to publish data or an instrument or a check sheet, a report, something with Design Safe, because we all recognize that we could sit on Zoom all day long if we had the capability, but it's really through getting our hands dirty, getting in there and learning how to do it that we're going to learn best. And so one of the key criteria for becoming a data ambassador is to publish something with Design Safe, so you can really speak with that confidence from start to end of what it's like to go through the process, and then to share it with others. And again, you've already brought to the table so many amazing ideas of groups that you want to share it with, people you want to share it with, but also ways that you want to share. And so we want to use just our remaining 8 minutes today. Design Safe and Converge would really love to hear from the future data ambassadors. What thoughts do you have? What hopes do you have? What questions or concerns do you have moving forward? So over to all of you, and thank you for all of your contributions already.
If that Google Doc shows you anything, never write anything down, because Lori will hold you to it. I think that's great. I think that's great.
Hey, Lori,
really, I'm just hoping they're going to keep adding to it, keep adding and adding.
Hey, Lori, this is Gavin. Just to add to that, I don't know if I actually signed up, but maybe I shouldn't do what Ellen just said, is I'm not going to volunteer. And I put it in the chat. So we've stood up a new group focused on sustainable and resilient coasts. And one of the first things I did is an inventory of faculty. And we found 250 faculty members on campus that span engineering, the humanities, social sciences, you name it, that are doing work in disaster resilience. And so my thought is it either we could have someone present to that body, or I could share some type of distilled bits of information that might be a multiplier for you. So
I put in the chat that
you may have. I'm sorry, I didn't keep up.
No. I because as so many people are asking for slides, so I've already created a folder in community data in Design Safe under training for this webinar, and my slides are there, Maria's slides are there, and when Lori is finished here and sends them to me, I'll put hers there as well. So and feel free to use those as needed.
Great.
Or invite us to come along.
Well, that's right. That's what I was wondering is, you all did a really good job of explaining the program and its value. I think that could be helpful, is to be able to explain, why should I be doing this? I'm busy and so forth, but to explain in a cohesive way, in a thoughtful way as to how that, why it makes sense for people to do it.
Yeah. And as I said, I'm very happy to talk to different groups. It's an important part of our outreach. And so I'm very, very willing to do that. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Gavin, just so you know, that's why we've been recording these sessions too. And already I've had a couple of people who couldn't attend the August 4th or this one. And it's been great because we've been able to say, okay, go, if you'll go and watch the video, look at all the slides and all of that. So, but there's nothing like the real thing where you can actually ask the Design Safe team questions. And so that's why we were hoping to, if people apply for NSF workshop grants, or if they write this in to their NSF grants, and they could really build this into your broader impacts, for example, to run one of these sessions. So thank you for that, Gavin, and thanks, Lauren, for the comment about just what are the materials that we need to provide so you can do your best job as data ambassador. So Lauren, I don't know if you want to say something more specific about that. What would help you?
Yeah, so I'm on a lot of teams right now, and so I've been pitching all summer, like, well, we could use Design Safe. It's got all these things, and I don't know how to do it yet, but I'm gonna circle back. So I was like sort of asking for some training before this was really ready to go. So I think the slides are really helpful. It was immensely helpful to just create a project and be able to do things. I think where I run into difficulty is like when I talk with the data scientists on the team, they're like, well, can I do this? And how does it work with MySQL? And I'm like, whoa. So I think that one, having some of the like screenshots and things from the slides to use as like, here's an overview, and then like set up an appointment to like ask your specifics about like technical things will be really helpful. And then I think for me, so I think there are people that I work with are familiar with the repositories idea or the sort of this type of platform. So really the starting from the technical part. So I don't remember who presented, it was maybe the third presentation. Craig, did you present something? I don't know. I was looking.
I didn't present slides.
I think that if we can excerpt that piece from this full recording and make that available as like a YouTube video, like that would be so helpful for me to shoot the collaborator and say like, look, this is what like the process looks like. And they can like eat a snack and watch it, and then we can have a conversation. That would be, that like particular piece would be really useful.
Yeah, because that's the hands-on, like click here, click there type of thing. So
yeah, you can convince them in like a minute of the importance and the value and why we should do it.
Yeah.
It meets the needs.
For those of you that have MySQL or database, Jupyter Notebooks, or GIS concerns, when you register for office hours, let us know, because then they are, you know, so we can target and see which person needs to talk to you.
Right. And sometimes, Lauren, you know, if it's someone, if it goes beyond what we already have, I'm open to tasking folks to say, yeah, let's do this. Let's put some resources to help you do what you need to do, even though we don't have that exact functionality. So I also appreciate being involved in discussions where we can say, ooh, this is something that would be used, and we're willing to help you get it.
Nathaniel, really quickly, because I know Nathaniel's jumping off and we're almost at time, but just really quickly, I wanted to say, and also when you finish the check sheet, which I'm going to send you this checklist as part of the post workshop materials, is everybody will receive your $750 in participant support once you've gone through the whole, you know, this checklist, which isn't too much. I mean, most of you have completed it now. So thank you, Nathaniel, and you're already done with this. So send me your checklist and thank you. And sorry, Lauren, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm collaborating with a lot of people right now that are not traditionally disaster people in COVID. And everyone that I've talked to about this and the office hours and the type of support and the storage and the capabilities has all been really exciting and impressive. And like, ooh, disaster people have this great thing. So way to go.
Oh, thanks.
And Lauren, those are the perfect way to go, about great words to end. So I know we are close to our last minute. And so just on behalf of the Converge team, we wanted to say congratulations to the entire future data ambassadors, and thank you for your time, your effort, and your care. And a huge just thank you and deep bow of gratitude to the Design Safe team. So Ellen, over to you for any closing words. Thank you.
I don't even know what to say, except that, Lori, thank you for organizing this. This whole concept of being a data ambassador and having these publish your data events is great. And we're trying to go circle back and bring that concept to the engineers where, I mean, there is a bit of a culture of this data publishing, but it still needs some work. And so this idea of bringing groups together to be our ambassadors is wonderful. And so we'll be expanding that idea to the whole community. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Maria, Craig, and Mehar for all of your extraordinary presentations. And thank you to all of you for being with us today. And we hope you have a great and safe rest of the day wherever you are. And just thank you for being with us. Bye. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thanks so much, everyone. I think this will be a really useful tool to help urge people towards open data practices.
Thank you, Eric, and I hope you get your power back soon.
It's a good break from the normal pace.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much, and we'll definitely get these slides to you, and the video will be up and everything, but I know you followed everything because you've been from the beginning, so thank you. And Latasha, thank you for staying with us the whole time. And I hope your detail is going well and that this was helpful.
This was very helpful. So I look forward to future conversations about how I can be more involved. So this was great. Thank you for including me.
No way. Thanks for joining. And please tell Natalie Grant, as always, thank you for being such a great connector. And we're so grateful. And Latasha, I want you to meet Jen Tobin, who's on there. She's actually the deputy administrator of the Natural Hazard Center.
Oh, okay. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Oops,
She's
nice to meet you too.
She's amazing, and she was the one you saw at the beginning. Who Dave Hondula is still on here too. They were like really at the very beginning, drew their data for the Design Safe team, so they've been with us from the beginning. So thank you for seeing the culmination of it all.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Dave Hondula, I don't know if you can still hear me, but I am so sorry that I left your name off the participant list, and I know that I'll update that and get everything resent, so I apologize, but thanks for showing us your cute cat. Okay. And Jen, just so you know, I may need to cancel our meeting at 3:30. I need to, and I just reschedule for early next week because we had a big call with CDC today. And have you talked to Jolie?
I have heard rumblings of it, but I don't know exactly what it was, what the context was.
Yeah, well, I'll just tell you really quickly. I mean, it was really, so they've literally just changed the rules. So initially, like all these Research Counts articles were already reviewed by Tracy and Dare, who are our two main points of contact, and they already give a lot of comments, which are great, but it's kind of like the wrong way, right? Because we have it finalized and then we send it to them. And then usually their comments are just like, fix this, fix that. But now there are 2 additional people at CDC who are reviewing everything, and it's Robin and Robin's boss. Yeah. And so it's like very high. So there are 4 people at CDC and everything's due on the 31st. And so we have to turn it into a Word document. And so anyway, it was definitely unexpected, the call today, but we're definitely going to be able to get it all done and everything, but it's just it's really hard because it was like, oh no.
Are they not in communication with each other about the project, and then they don't hear anything until they get the like final edits, and then they like come back with a million different comments? Like what's the delay and authority?
I know, I don't know what it is, and I think it's part of the review cycle or something, but anyway, it was definitely, but Jolie was awesome. Like I called her immediately after and I was like, okay, here's what we a plan, and then she of course had an even better modification to the plan, but I sent her an article today and I have to get it done so it can be part of this, so I may be editing it when we were supposed to meet, so that's why I may just ask to reschedule for like.
And let me know if you want me to help with anything. I'm happy to edit or look at things, or if there's any way I can be of assistance to kind of help roll this out. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and no, and I think it's just one of these things that, like, I think a lot of the blow was that we thought we were like 85% of the way there, which was far enough because we were only required to do 10, but we have like 20 articles. And so we thought we were like 85% of the way there, but then we found out there's these 2 extra people who are reviewing everything, and they really review. And because I think because the CDC's under, oh my God, I should stop recording, is because the CDC's, you know, under so much scrutiny, and which again, I